Lucy. Titanic. What the hell is that?
I went to New York for the weekend, went to a wedding. I went to see Josh Groban as Sweeney Todd. Fantastic.
Okay.
But I thought you were like, I went to Josh Groban's Sweeney Todd wedding for a second. Like, wait a minute.
Oh,
Wait a minute.
sick.
But
Damn, that's good.
Very good, very good. But I saw an off-Broadway show called Titanic, which is a retelling of the story of Titanic, but Celine Dion.
Burlesque?
No,
right.
it's all the music of Celine Dion, and Celine Dion is a character in it on the Titanic.
What?
And it was
Sick.
incredible. I have not laughed so hard at anything. Like, it was really camp, super rude, ton of Celine Dion songs. And the best thing is,
Wait, just to be clear, was it actually Celine Dion?
No, it was.
okay.
She's busy in Vegas.
A Broadway star. But basically, they did like this big spoof of RuPaul's Drag Race. They did spoofs of, actually, weirdly, of Sweeney Todd, which we'd just seen, because Annalee Ashford's London accent in Sweeney Todd is quite something. However, I was out
in a bad way, because you are a real English accent snob. Anytime there's an accent that's remotely off by a slight decibel or whatever, you're like, hang on, listen, stop, let's pause.
It's true.
I am a British accent snob, which I shouldn't be because my accent is appalling. But the thing is that she's very, very funny, so I forgive. I forgive. But they took the piss out of it in Titanic, and I had a great time. Although I spent like 3 nights in a row out till 3 a.m. every night, so
Lucy,
feeling
that's
it.
not allowed at this point.
Lucy, can I just be honest with you?
Yeah.
Ever since I've met you, there's been many nights where you're out till 3 a.m. drinking. That's like, if there is a party, Lucy James rolls deep. It's not a surprise. Lucy shows up to rock and roll, my friends.
Right. No, the thing is because I'm so tired all of the time that I feel like if I know that I'm doing something big on the weekend, I kind of hibernate and just kind of get a bunch of energy in the bank, and then I'll go out, and then I'll sleep for 3 days when I'm back.
Yeah. Ain't nothing wrong with going hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone to another rock and roll episode.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the rock and roll episode.
Joining us this week, bless you, Ben Hanson from MinnMax. You are bringing the rock and roll energy.
Oh, the entire show, guaranteed. Here I am. Thank you so much for having me. I really love the podcast. I had a real highlight of my life is the weird experience of seeing a preview for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth recently, and ran into Gerard in the Square Enix lobby, and I got to do the thing that has never happened to me, but I dream of this, where I get to show him my phone and show him I was listening to an episode of this podcast as I was meeting him for the first time in the middle of the Sea of Stars interview. It was perfect.
That is
great.
incredible.
How good was that interview, by the way? That guy ruled. It was so good.
It's great.
Yeah,
Terry's the best.
Really fantastic.
Yeah, man, that was surreal, Ben, because I have known of you on the internet for years, and we've had tons and tons and tons of mutuals.
Right.
But that was the first time that you and I actually met and spoke in person. And then here you are.
Here I am. Thanks for having me on.
And I had nothing to do with that. That was Lucy and Ralph being like, hey, let's get Ben on the show. So
perfect. Well, thank you.
Yeah, well,
thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan of what you guys are doing over there with MinnMax, and it's always great to tune in. And I love the little clips that do the rounds and Trivia Tower and all that shit, man. It's good stuff. So it's really been fantastic to like see what's going on over there, and it's awesome to have you here. So thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thanks for mentioning Trivia Tower. Yeah, we do that every month. We just wrapped up our Tournament of Champions, where we brought back every winner from a previous Trivia Tower and had them face off in a pit of death. So it was intense, but it was super fun. Ash Parrish from The Verge was the co-host, and it was a blast.
Oh man, yeah, I was on Trivia Town once, and it was incredible. The speed at which some people can type, terrifying.
Oh yeah, dude, this guy on the latest episode, we have basically a round that's like Wheel of Fortune, and nobody had guessed a single letter yet. There were no prompts anywhere, and this guy goes, the Quarry?
What?
And it was correct. Like, who guesses the Quarry just looking at like a Wheel of Fortune board? It blew my mind.
I bet he cleans up on Wordle, you know?
Oh,
he is
big time.
in the NYT
Totally.
app every single day.
Absolutely.
Doing his Wordle. Well, what else have you got, guys? What else have you guys got cooking over at MinnMax at the moment?
Yeah, well, the MinnMax show, and by the way, MinnMax, it's a Minnesota thing, so it's MinnMax. It's where we're all formed because we're kind of spawned out of Game Informer 4 years ago. But the MinnMax Show is our main podcast on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. But then the big thing that we're gearing up for is we do a whole series called The Deepest Dive, which are like multi-part game club discussions. So we take a big game, past, present, future, well, mostly present or past, I guess, and we break it up into multiple chunks and then play through it with the community and have, as we like to put it, the best, most thorough discussion about the game on the internet. Try to give the game the discussion it deserves. So like we talked about Final Fantasy VII Remake for 17 hours.
Oh my God.
But the fun thing, hear me out.
As long as the game.
Yeah, it really, some I think have been longer than the games we've covered. But the fun thing is we tap into the hive mind of the MinnMax community. And so everybody submits their own thoughts and we read them during the discussion. So we're really like, it's the cream rising to the top for the most interesting discussions to help fuel this entire thing. So the point is we're doing Alan Wake 2 as the next deepest dive, which seems like, based on your discussion on this podcast, where you all were still red hot on it, seems like a good one to really unpack every nook and cranny of. So we're excited to do it.
Absolutely.
Are you doing wait, how are you preparing for Alan Wake 2 in terms of Remedy Connected Universe stuff?
Are you going to be logging into Fortnite and playing the new Alan Wake prequel experience available exclusively in Fortnite?
Yeah, I went back and streamed the first couple hours of the original Alan Wake, which somehow I had never gotten to. I don't know what's wrong with me, but after hearing so much, glowing praise for Alan Wake 2 in the previews, I'm like, I should go back and check this out. And I don't know if y'all know this, the original Alan Wake rules. There's a reason people have been screaming about it for a decade now. So sadly, I probably won't play through it. I'll just watch like a YouTube recap going into Alan Wake 2, and I'm sure there's going to be a nice recap in the game. There's
one coming out on like Monday on Gamespot, so
hey, I'll check that out.
Classy plug, Lucy, very classy.
Yeah. I didn't do anything on it, so it's all Mark Delaney.
Yeah, but other folks that are going to be on that deepest dive conversation, like Haley McLean, who's our community manager and a video game IP lawyer in her own right. She's a genius. And so she is like red hot on Alan Wake, and she just finished the first one. So it's going to be a fun, informed discussion on our YouTube channel there with MinnMax.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
looking forward to that.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, we really appreciate you coming in, because obviously poor Jake Bardino's not joining us this week, but we're going to have a good time. We have an interview with Bryan Intihar, who is, I think, his senior creative director. That's how they introed him. I was like, I didn't even know you could get one above creative director.
That's called Please Don't Leave Insomniac, Bryan Intihar. What do we have to give you as a title to have you stay?
But we recorded that earlier today, and it was a very fun chat. So I guess we'll just throw to it, and then we've all been playing Spider-Man too, so there's a lot to talk about.
Sure. By the way, this interview spoiler free. Totally
spoiler free.
Yeah,
great.
Except for poor Stu, our editor, because there was a spoiler and we had to cut it out. So Stu,
we have to tell. We had Stu. There's a big spoiler, buddy. I'm so sorry.
So it came from Bryan.
It is removed. That's right.
It's true.
All safe to watch.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for joining us. I have a question to kick us off with. I'm really interested in your journey before we talk about Spider-Man, because you've kind of done it all. What was your journey? Because you were like 1UP, EGM, community, and now is it senior creative director on Spider-Man?
Yeah. So I actually started out out of college. I was a magazine editor, and eventually moved out to San Francisco to work at EGM, and was there for the 1UP days. And then about in 2008, I decided that it was time to make a change, and got into game development. Started out on the community team at Insomniac. It was kind of my foot in the door to kind of figure out how games were made, and realized I had no idea what I was talking about or what I was doing. And basically was like a sponge for a couple of years, and then moved into production. Basically less than a couple of years in, and then right when we were finishing Sunset Overdrive, I was talking to Ted Price, our president and CEO, and he said, "What do you think about working on a Marvel game?" And I said, "Well, I think we should totally do it." And I think I was like, I don't know if I was like having like a fever dream or whatever. I was just trying to finish Sunset Overdrive as the producer on it. And we were talking about it, and I said, "We just have to do this. We have to do this." And I remember him going, "Well, we wouldn't need a producer right away." And I don't know to this day why I said it at that moment, I said, well, I don't want to be the producer. I want to be the creative director. And we hadn't even decided like, I mean, he had just had the conversation, and I don't know, maybe I was just tired and that was it. And he looked at my boss at the time, John Fiorito. He looked back at me, he goes, okay. And that was it. So I guess, right place, right time. I had mentioned, probably in passing, I was interested in being a creative director one day, and now we're here. So it's been a wild, unbelievable ride. I can say outside of maybe a couple months here and there, since I've graduated college, I've pretty much had every job I've ever wanted. So I've been pretty happy.
That's
like
crazy.
I remember being on my best friend's front porch as a little kid going, wouldn't it be cool to write for EGM one day?
Yeah.
Wow.
Totally. But that's pretty crazy. And not to I know it's hard to kind of talk yourself up and blow your own trumpet, right? But to go 2008, you joined Insomniac after being a games journalist. And then you became creative. And Spider-Man would have started work, 2013, 14, you started work on that in earnest?
Yeah, so
that's that's a really quick ascension. How did that happen? And obviously that's where I come back to my question. What do you think you were able to do so well that gave Insomniac the confidence to do that? Because that's crazy. That's a lot. That's really far.
I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question. So now I'm nervous. I think a couple things. One is I think it starts with the actual studio, Insomniac. I think the thing I like to tell people is one of the reasons why I've been here for over 15 years now and why I love it here is because it's a place that if you have the desire and the will and the passion and you show the ability, you get opportunities. And I think that's kind of what my career has been in Insomniac, whether it was going from the community team to project management, which by the way, I just learned on the go. And I kind of showed a interest, and I spent time going over to our character artists before I was ever, a producer, and going how can I learn more about the character development process? How do you guys go through your modeling stages and stuff like that? And actually grabbing books from them and going, let me read about it. So, I did a lot of outside work. I remember, so I lived in San Francisco for 5 years working for EGM. I wasn't the best writer in the world. To this day, I'm still not the best writer in the world, but I ended up being I'll say an average editor. But what I did was I realized I had to get better, and I read grammar books on the bus when I was going to EGM. So I kind of took that mentality of whatever it takes outside the normal hours to learn and catch up. And that's what I did. And I talked to a lot of people. And I always say that when I made the change from community team to production, I was actually the first project manager. Project manager producer is kind of a similar term in Insomniac. And I remember I got to work on the project that ended up being Fuse. And I always tell people that first year on Fuse is one of the best times I've ever had in game development, because it was like going to, in many ways, development school. And there was two people, Ryan Smith and Doug Sheehan, who basically in 1 year taught me how video games were made. And Ryan Smith is a senior great game director on Marvel Spider-Man 2, and Doug Sheehan is the gameplay director on Marvel Spider-Man 2. So we've been all together since basically 2010, those two people. And they hate that I always say that they taught me how video games were made, but that's what it is. And I think it's a combination of, I tried to work really hard. I tried to listen. I tried to ask a lot of questions. But I can tell you along the way from my very first job all the way to now, all the people who, if it weren't for them, I would not be in these positions. So I owe a lot of credit to a lot of people. I will be buying a lot of codes for Spider-Man 2 and handing. I mean, I will tell you, one of the reasons why I got the job at Insomniac was Amy Henning was at Insomniac that day, and I had known Amy, and they asked her, and she's like, oh yeah, I would totally hire him. And I was having lunch with her during GDC when Insomniac called and told me that I got the job at Insomniac. And I actually got a text from her a couple days ago, just yesterday, about congratulating me on the reviews. And someone like Amy, who I have wanted to be like my entire career, and and I consider her a friend. I consider her someone who I admire. Obviously, her creative talent is incredible, and she's such a great director. So you can probably I don't like talking about myself, but it is I will tell you, it is I owe a lot to a metric ton of people to be in that position. So how did I get here that fast? It's really the people I worked with got me here. Sorry, I know that was a long way. I know you have
no. That's awesome.
You want to talk about me, and you want to talk about Spider-Man?
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. Thank you.
So Bryan, let's just kind of jump into it. Before we jump into Marvel Spider-Man 2, let's start at obviously the first game in Miles Morales. What was it like to be handed the keys to the kingdom of Spider-Man at this point? Because we hadn't had a Spider-Man game that people had really enjoyed, and you guys had a lot of shoes and expectations to fill. What was it like to be handed those keys and just kind of given that blank slate of doing whatever you guys would like to do?
Well, I figured I would start with something really simple with my first game being a creative director. Obviously super nerve-wracking. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I made a ton of mistakes. And we could talk for an hour about just the mistakes I made. But I think at the end of the day, I've always been a Marvel fan. I've always been a superhero fan. I was just in New York over the weekend and doing some stuff for Spider-Man. I met up with my mom. We went to dinner and we were talking about how as a little kid, so I'm old and I'm old enough to know what underoos are and wore them. And she always tells the story how when I was a really little kid, I would wear up to 8 underoos t-shirts at once because according to her, I didn't know what superhero I wanted to be and I wanted to be able to change really quickly. So it's kind of always been that. It's like outside of sports, superheroes and comics have kind of been my thing growing up, and obviously video games. And it was both exciting, it was nerve-wracking, and then you're just trying to figure out how do you lead a team? How do you establish a creative vision that people can believe in? And we had never made a licensed never worked with licensed IP. It was all stuff that Insomniac created. So it was a lot of different challenges. But we knew if Insomniac was going to work on something like Spider-Man, the expectations were going to be really high. And, we just kind of boiled down to what are those 4 to 5 pillars of the game that we want to, it was about, you got to fulfill that Spider-Man fantasy. It starts with swinging, right? It's about, for us is about the story is not as much about the superhero fantasy as it is the human story, right? And making relatable characters with believable motivations. And then just the level of what you expect from an Insomniac game. You expect great combat, you expect great missions, you expect an interesting world. So just taking all the things we're really good at and applying it to a Spider-Man IP. But you think about all the major things. I remember at first the first big challenge we overcame was traversal, and Doug, who I mentioned earlier, is kind of our traverse was is the father of our traversal system, right? And then you moved on to okay, now we had to work out the story, and the story had has ups and downs, and we figure stuff out. And then really combat was the last thing, because we had never really made a third-person melee action game before, right? Ratchet was more of a shooter than anything else, and Sunset was more of a shooter, and Resistance obviously was first person. It'd been a long time since Spyro, right? And I don't think Spyro and Spider-Man are that in terms of combat. So we had so it's kind of getting everything up, and then seeing and then setting things up for when we did the Miles game, and seeing that team take that character and just bring him to life. We'd never seen a Miles game before, which was great, and see them really, really take a character that people were starting to really know and love and make him even more popular. And it kind of made me feel good that, hey, our idea eventually was to have Pete and Miles as a spider team, right? And now we could move him more forward with confidence. So Yeah, it was. I mean, I think it just starts with like, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure with anything we make, but when you're working on something with such popularity and such an iconic character, I mean, like, I can tell you, it's the first game where I could tell my parents like describe to them in one word what I was working on, and I didn't have to like go like, so it's like this, but that, right? It's like I say, I'm making Spider-Man, and they're like, we got it. So yeah, but it was I mean, hey, we got to make a second one, so we did something right.
So you had Spider-Man come out 2018, then Miles Morales, launch game for PS5, both critically, commercially, incredibly successful, beloved. Was there anything you felt like you left on the table with those two as you started Spider-Man 2?
That's a great question. I think, obviously things change, or like, you get to a point where like, I remember in the first game, we had like, one of the criticisms I think for the first game was like, oh, hey, the Sinister Six felt like it was kind of like truncated or shortened. Well, there's a reason. Like we weren't going to hit the quality bar and that stuff, so we kind of tightened things up, right? And but like I don't think we like left anything on the table. Like I don't think I was like, oh my god, if we had this, it would have changed. I felt like, I heard, I don't know if this is totally true. So it's like one of those things. Like I think if I read it on Twitter or something like that, like kind of the way that Marvel Studios does, like they don't try to hold back anything. It's like we're going to do everything we can with every movie and just make it. And so we kind of did that on Spider-Man 1. Is like, let's just do everything we want to do, and if hopefully everybody likes it, because we can always come up with more stuff. Like there's 60 years of comics. We'll figure stuff out. Like we'll figure it out. But yeah, no, nothing. I think for what I walked away from Spider-Man was, okay, people like it. They like what we're doing. Now, if we're going to do another one, which, we knew pretty early on based on the critical success and everything, that we were probably going to do another one. It was like, okay, what is the stuff that we don't want to break? Like, if not broke, don't fix it. And then where are the opportunities to improve things? And I think that's the journey we started pretty quickly, that's where it kind of was like, it was less about what was left on the table. It was like, okay, if we were to do it again, what we would do. And I think a lot, like, I was like, I'm a huge Naughty Dog fan, right? And I look at like Uncharted 2, like how could, there's definitely a new something they worked on, and then boom, you saw the sequel. I mean, obviously, I'm a big fan of Amy, right? So like, and I remember when we all saw Uncharted 2, we were like, oh wow, like that's like, holy cow, like, whoa, they're doing stuff. Wow. And I think that was somewhat in my head, but I think it was really about building upon the stuff that worked and then looking for the opportunities, the things that we thought could get better.
Well, that's like a good segue then, because I'm starting to talk about Spider-Man 2. What were those things that you sort of set out? Like, what on the whiteboard in the first meeting where like the headline is just Spider-Man 2, what are we going to do? Like, what were those things that were like, yeah, we need to hit this in the sequel?
So do you want to hear like the creative director, like, or do you want to hear this Marvel fanboy version? Like, what do you want to hear?
Well, I mean, both. Whatever you. Well, we got the time if you do.
The Marvel fanboy was, we're going to open up with Sandman.
Right.
Like it's gonna be Sandman, and it was like we're gonna create something that right off the bat, that's like the scale of it. It's something so big that it would require two Spider-Men to work together. Like that was like, I was like, I remember it was really early. Like it might have still been 2018. I was like, we're doing Sandman.
That's cool.
And I got those looks. And we were like, okay. And I was like, because big characters like that are a challenge, as you probably are aware. And then you throw the technical hurdle of something made out of sand. Yeah. So that was like, I think that the web wings was definitely, we had actually prototyped a really early version of web wings in Spider-Man 1, but it just, we were not going to be able to polish it the way we wanted to. Doug had done it in like I don't know, probably like 2 or 3 days, and we're like, it's really cool. We're not probably going to get to the quality we want on it. Let's save it. So I knew that. Obviously, the way the first game ended, we knew we were going to do Venom. But I think, now taking like, okay, if I was, I'm sitting here being really professional with all of you. It's like, hey, we knew that we wanted to have a greater sense of exploration, discovery in the open world and increase the level of storytelling and the optional content. Like that was a big goal for us. We knew that we wanted to push our boss fights even further, and not only with the power of the PS5, the scale of them go bigger and bolder, and you go like get away with just everything happening in one arena. Like I think the lizard fight's a good example of like that. Starts underground, it goes up, it goes through a chase through a city, goes up a skyscraper, down, and then back to the ground. Kind of taking, and it all happens seamlessly, right? We wanted to have that, but at the same time, as you progress through the phases, like all great boss fights, you've played the games, like there's a new level, something new gets introduced. We challenge the player. That was a big focus for us. And then, those are like the two like big things that we were definitely working on for us in terms of like areas we wanted to improve. And then just like, we knew it was going to be we knew people liked the story of Spider-Man and Miles. But we also knew now telling the story of two spider heroes was going to be a challenge. And how could we do it and still have like, a story that made sense? How do we even like, and there's things like, you're like, oh my God, how do we even, okay, so this mission starts as he plays Pete, but then the next main mission is going to be as Miles, but how do we transition to there? But now this mission has both of them, but we don't want them to end with them together. Like, so there's all these complications, and then you're like, oh yeah, the story actually has to make sense, and people like these characters. So that's the kind of stuff that's the stuff that makes me have a lot less hair in my head than I did when we started this project. But those kind of things, I think like, things we want to retain was like, make sure we're telling a human story, make sure that, we're using characters like a Venom or Kraven and Lizard. Like, let's make sure that even like a character like Venom has believable motivations. Traversal, it's like, if you screw it up, every fan in the world's going to tell you how bad you are. Like, make it, add to it, improve it, but don't screw it up. Combat, how can we add new elements to not only power up the characters, but also provide the enemies with more of a threat. So, like we had the idea of the either the undodgeable attacks and issues of parry. So, there's all those kind of building blocks. But again, it's kind of really the high picture is like, don't screw up what they love and look for those opportunities to improve. And I think so far, seems like based on the reviews, we did a pretty good job. So I'm happy. Yeah.
For sure.
When it comes to the two Spider-Man and the stories, obviously you guys are masters at kind of balancing them. It really, to me, playing the game, it blew me away because I say this with the utmost respect. It felt like I was playing and or watching a really solid Sam Raimi Spider-Man film that also collided into a really great Across the Universe sequel that no one has ever seen before. And you guys told these two separate stories that collided into this beautiful original piece where these heroes come together. How difficult was it to balance that kind of camera time? Because everyone's gonna want to play as Miles for a little bit, but can't forget about Peter. I mean, that's got to be a tug of war that you guys had to kind of go through.
It was really hard. And all the credit goes to our writers and our animators. They spend so much time, obviously story treatments, scripts, and then, when we go to performance capture, and, as you all know, like performance capture takes time. It takes, it's a big process, and you don't want to waste that time. So when you go, you want to make sure you're confident. There's a lot of trying stuff out and try to do it on paper where it's cheaper, and quicker. If you've seen an interview with me in the past, it's called Spider-Man 2 for a reason. We wanted Pete and Miles to be the story. And I think it's always tough to like, okay, and with Pete with the symbiote, and, how do we balance like, okay, people are going to really want to play as a symbiote, but man, Miles is a really cool character and has his own storylines. And like, how could we, it's weird. Like there's one main story, right? It's, there's just one story they're going on together, but at the same time, we really wanted to make sure they have their own individual stories with their own obstacles. And at the same time, they're there for each other. They're challenging each other. They're supporting each other. It's hard to try to even describe it. It's like making me break out in sweats. Again, I really think it's, and like things change, like mission order changes to kind of get that good flow in there. But what I think one of the things I'm most proud of when I look back in the game is their relationship, how it evolves, where it starts, where it ends, their journey together, the conflict. I think is one of the things, and how that comes across in the game is one of the things it obviously was something we wanted to do. I think the final version was better than anything I know I could have dreamt up. And again, that's all the writers and the animators and really the whole team. I mean, everybody really at the end of the day, like whether you're a designer, programmer, animator, audio, rigger, we're all storytellers. And I think that's what kind of, you talk about the difference between Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 is what I'm really, really happy with. We had so many new leaders step up on Spider-Man 2 that, I kind of just stayed out of the way and just let them, do their thing. And I think that's why the game ended up being at the quality ended, because the team just really owned it. And I think there's a level of experience. We worked on Spider-Man 1, we worked on Miles. You start to get a cheat sheet in terms of like what's not going to work, but then it allows you to kind of flex some new muscles and do some areas. Like, I don't know if like it would have been the smartest thing in the world to come out with the first game of both Pete and Miles being Spider-Man. I think we would have been, ripping our hair out. Mm-hmm. But now we kind of got to that point. Now we can do it. And I think it's hard, but a lot of times because it's hard, that means it's worth doing.
Yeah. Obviously, Venom is one of the big bads in this game. And the other one is Kraven. And actually, Sony actually have a Kraven movie coming out at some point in the future. And I was curious, has there been any like collaboration between you guys during development on story or character or anything around that? Or is it two totally separate things?
It's totally two different things. I think the industry has learned sometimes to keep, let the movies do the movie thing, let the games do their thing, comics do their things. That being said, we've had conversations with the Spider-Verse team, and they're awesome, and our working relationship and collaboration, as you've seen thing, whether it was in Spider-Man and Miles and now this, that relationship has only grown, and there's a lot of respect there between us. No, it's not like our Kraven is related to their Kraven or it's the same character and stuff like that. So right. Yeah, we try to, obviously I'm a big Marvel Studios fan, and want to make sure that we, where it makes sense. Like obviously we have a lot of their suits in the game and stuff like that. So but no, I think we have learned like, hey, let's do what's right for us. Let's do that's right for them. And and wherever we can, if we have a clever collaboration, it's definitely something we can do and talk about. It's just when it came to Kraven, there's no connection.
Yeah. I think as well, one thing that stood out to me playing through it was it got quite dark. I mean, I think that you saw some of that with Kraven, definitely saw some of that with Venom towards the back end. Was there ever a moment where you guys were like, whoa, maybe let's pull up a little bit here. Maybe we're going a bit too far. Or was it like, nah, man, this is it. We're right on.
That's a great question. I think when you introduce the symbiote and Venom, and then you have characters like Kraven, it's naturally going to be probably a darker story. I just think it is. That being said, it was critical for us to make sure we still have moments of heart and humor. And I think you see that now, obviously early on, that's easier in the game, but we still want to have that fun loving Spider-Man. It's just, I think, a lot of times I get, like, hey, well, I want to be surprised, I want to mix things up. Well, if we just did the same Peter story every single time, it'd be like, oh, I kind of know what's going on. So we want to take Peter to a different place. We wanted to see how the symbiote not only impacts him, but impacts his people closest to him, whether it's Miles, MJ, Harry, others. So it's, yes, quote unquote, there are elements that are darker. I don't think we ever said, oh, this is too dark. I think it was us for like, this is what's right for this story. But at the end of the day, let's make sure that the things that people love about Pete and Miles, and that sense of humor, especially the level of heart and emotion, is still prevalent throughout the entire experience.
You guys somehow, not to cut you off, but I think one of the things that I'm most fascinated about Marvel Spider-Man 2 is how everyone is right and everyone is wrong at the same time in every single scene. You have these superheroes and these normal people, and miscommunication and the gray is where this game lives. And that's just such a cool thing to see, because it's kind of the forefront of the story, right? Is if these people communicated a bit more, like, they could solve a lot of their issues, and that's what life is.
Yeah, and I think that's a great observation. I think the other thing is, for us, is writing villains where they, what we talked about is how are they the heroes of their own story, right? And I think that whether it was Otto in the first game, whether it was Tinker in the Miles game, and now with Venom, is like, how can you make, now their way of going about it may be really weird and bad, but if you just like took down what they want to do, you see it from a certain perspective, right? And I think that's what makes great villains, in my opinion, is like how they go about things is wrong, but they're what they want to do maybe isn't completely, it's hard to argue with it. And I think that's what makes for good stories. Like if everything was just about revenge, or was just about, you did this bad to me, I'm going to get back at you, it's harder to connect with. And I think, as much as, like we said, we spend, if not more time, as much time on making sure our villains' arcs in our stories and their motivations is as relatable, compelling as our heroes.
I was going to ask about some of the tech stuff. So a lot of videos have been going around online, obviously, of your incredible fast travel system. It's ridiculous. In terms of the tech behind Marvel Spider-Man 2, what is that kind of the biggest flex that Insomniac has in the game? Or is it, within the accessibility settings? Is it something that people haven't necessarily picked up on yet? Because it's impressive.
The fast travel is a pretty big flex. I gotta say, I don't, and I say that because I know the core, our engine team and our programmers, like, I'm going to flex for them because they're unbelievable. And you know what's crazy? So we did that. You know that video we released where we showed fast travel for the first time? I did that terrible narration there. You hear my voice for 4 minutes. We actually, so Mike Fitzgerald, our engine director, after that video came out, goes to a bunch of us, goes, I think we can make it faster. And I actually go, I'm the one, which, by the way, I'm always the one asking for more and more and more. I was one going, just don't break the game. Just don't break it. Like, we're so close to finishing this thing. But yeah, I think that's a big flex. I think the hero switching and how quick the open world hero switching is another one. You can, if you really get in a groove of swinging, you can go really, really fast, like way faster than you ever could in Spider-Man 1. You would have broke the game. And I think the other thing for me is I go back to that lizard example, right? The being able to obviously there have been games that do like indoor outdoor transitions and going above and below ground, but we have that ability now to have it, quote unquote, I'll call it easier. Anytime we say anything's easy in game development, I use quotes because nothing is ever easy, but it allowed us to dream bigger for those big moments. Like, you saw, there's a scene during the first mission with Miles, Pete, and Sandman. And there's this crazy, I'll say there's a throw, and where the characters go and the speed at which they go. Like, I don't know how we could have done that on the first game. And then, so I think it's like a culmination of everything. But even like little things like in the preview, when we did the preview event, there's that mission where Pete is going to Dr. Connor's house, right? And he's not going to make it to the fish market in time. He goes, I got to call Miles. So Pete's up in northern Queens. Miles is in Central Park. That scene where we see him with Haley, that's like, you have to load that really super, like it happens like that, right? And so our storytelling could evolve. So whereas like the cool, like, hey, if you're on Twitter or X or whatever it's called, you see the fast travel video is like, that's like the, like, whoa, for me, it's the big culmination of all those things adding up to what I call like a next gen Spider-Man experience. So like, because we knew we weren't going to be cross-platform. We were going to, unlike Miles, we were going to make that. And I think also the other thing is like looking at what Ratchet did, like looking at how Ratchet, I mean, that is like a console, like tech showcase if I've ever seen one, right? And it's taking that, and I know we're not talking spoilers, but there are things in the game, specifically one very mission that you'll know, like, oh, there's Ratchet people working on this game,
Yeah, true. True.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that, but yeah, that fast travel is one hell of a fix.
Yeah, I mean, today I learned that Spider-Man 2 has fast travel because I finished this game and never once did I use the fast travel system because I can't imagine anything crazier than fast traveling in a Spider-Man game. I mean, that is madness to me. What the hell?
So, what's really interesting is like that was the problem on Spider-Man 1. Like, no, like I think people got a kick out of the animations on the subway and stuff.
So,
but we have really listen, fast travel is really cool, and Spider-Man 2, it looks really cool, and it's technically a marvel. But like, if we're doing our job right as Spider-Man developers, we want you to be able to swinging around and web wigging like crazy.
Yeah, because I'd be like at the very bottom end of the city, and then I'd see an objective marker at the literally the exact opposite end of the map, and I'd be like, damn, guess I have to web swing across the entire city now. And that's exactly what I would do, and I'd be happy about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
exactly. I will tell you, Spider-Man open world traversal makes it sometimes harder to play other games where you have to travel very far. Because it's just like, I mean, it's fun. It's fun for sure.
So
I legit would fast travel after taking a break from the game, and I'd boot it back up. I would fast travel just to get into it because it's just so cinematic, just the way the camera moves and pushing into the city. It's something straight out of the films, and it's just so cool.
And that's a great example of learning what the console can do and the tech in our engine, then animation, gameplay, design, all getting together, going, how can we, and UI, and going, how can we make the presentation look cool? Because I've seen it 1,000 times. I geek out every single time it goes into the map. It's like, it's really cool. And it's so funny, like, we work on these big epic boss fights and these big things and adding this, and it's like you show like this 2-second fast travel video and everybody was like, holy crap. But hey, that's great.
Yeah. Well, look, we're very conscious of your time. I personally have one final question, which is that, let's say hypothetically, and this is purely a hypothetical.
Okay.
Let's say that you guys make a Spider-Man 3, right? Just in the off chance that you might think about that, right?
I love that you're covering your mouth so you don't give anything away.
I'm a terrible. Everybody says I wear my emotions on my sleeve. I'm a terrible poker player, and as you can see, so go for
it. If you were to suit up again, so to speak, what might be the things that would really interest you about having another swing at this franchise, at these characters, at this city?
I think if Spider-Man 1 was like, Spider-Man and Miles were like our Iron Man, and Spider-Man 2 was like a Civil War, where do we go? Where logically do we go from there? I think it'd be pretty epic. But let's see.
I love watching. Yes. I think anyone that's listening to this is just a podcast will have missed your face as you were trying to think about what can I say right now? What can I say without saying it?
Me murdered.
So this that face is priceless. Thank you very much. And I really hope people are watching this one on YouTube. I think it's really worth it just for that moment alone. So
well, thanks, guys. Great questions. I had a lot of fun. I forgot we were recording this, and I was like, oh,
What is the need for VPNs these days, and why is NordVPN the best option to go with if you're thinking about using a VPN?
So the big thing is obviously privacy. NordVPN essentially encrypts your online data, making it much more difficult for people to access that when it comes to things like online payments or your personal details. Obviously, we put all of our information online these days. That's just kind of how we have to live if we're going to be in the world. And so NordVPN just makes it much safer to be online, protecting your identity and making you less susceptible to hacks.
The other thing about NordVPN is that they excel at amazing speeds. It's confirmed by various speed tests all over the world online that NordVPN is the fastest VPN out there in the market.
What was the last thing you used a VPN for?
Oh man, I specifically actually used NordVPN recently because I was in London and I wanted to watch Tulsa King and I couldn't. So I used a VPN so I could watch the whole show. And let me tell you, I ended up really loving Tulsa King. So without NordVPN, I couldn't have done it.
Yeah, I use it all the time to watch not only the Great British Bake Off, but I've become really obsessed with the new series of Married at First Sight UK. So I've been watching that and Grand Designs. It's basically like I never left home because I'm just watching stuff on British TV.
That's why NordVPN made their product in the first place. So that
Exactly.
expat Brits could still keep watching reality TV and baking
Yay.
shows.
Not get left behind.
Absolutely. We actually have a special deal running with NordVPN here on the podcast. If you visit nordvpn.com/friends per second, you can get bonus subscription time for free. You can try it risk-free for 30 days, money-back guarantee. Pretty good deal. Thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.
All right, boys, we have all been playing Marvel's Spider-Man 2. It's a good game.
Yes, we have.
Very
So
good
good.
Video game. It's a very good video game.
And I don't like Spider-Man as a character.
What?
How is that
Hang
possible?
on.
That's
Yeah, what
not
are
a
you talking
sentence that
about?
anyone can actually say. That's not possible.
Because-
okay, just to be clear, do you dislike Spider-Man or you just don't like Spider-Man?
I just don't love Spider-Man the way that you all love Spider-Man.
Okay.
Right, if I'm talking about the pantheon of superheroes, he is not mentally ill enough for me. There's nothing in there for me to go and fix. He is not my Bruce Wayne, okay?
Just a sweet
I
boy
see.
is no good. He's trash. I get
He's
it.
too
Okay.
sweet. He's too nice.
He needs to have a lot of emotional instability.
I feel like if
I need to
Zack
be able
Snyder,
to fix him.
if Zack Snyder took a swing at the Spider-Man character, maybe you would like him at that point. Because Zack Snyder would find a way to fuck him up.
Wait,
and then
no,
he's
no.
back on the menu for Lucy.
But instead it would be like a May? Why did you say that name?
Or maybe if he had some sort of symbiote soup and it changed his attitude in some way,
Yeah.
perhaps
Oh,
that'd be more up your
That's
alley.
good. That's good. That's bringing us back
I like it.
to Spider-Man 2, which is a game that is a piece of candy approach to game design, in that every single thing, every time I finish doing anything and there's like
Yeah.
a split second where I have nothing to do, it's like, do this. Go do that.
true.
Go do that. Go do that. And it is the most compelling gameplay loop of anything I've played in a very long time, and I'm in love
Yeah.
with it. I never thought I'd say that.
Nice.
I'm totally
awesome.
with you. Like the sense of momentum that this game has, like it is a tough one to put down. Like I've had a code for a while and I was playing a bunch of other stuff. And the second I started this up, I'm like, why wasn't I playing this like a week ago? This is all I want in my life. It's the magic of just right game, right time. This, man, did I love this game. I enjoyed the last two a fair bit, but you know, I went back and checked and neither of them made my top 10 list that year, which seems strange now in retrospect, because this game is like, yeah, I absolutely was blown away by it. Loved it.
So what was for you was the difference that between the original two and this one? Like, what was the thing?
Yeah. It's a good question. I was wondering to myself, like, did I just undervalue the last games? But the big thing is, I mean, wildly impressive PS5 game. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think it was a sense of momentum and also just the story, which we can unpack without spoilers here, but the sense of variety. You know, I feel like the missions were constantly changing things up. There's always a good carrot dangling in front of you to keep you playing, and the variety of like having more creative missions, weird missions in the main storyline even, combined with then splitting into two Spider-Men and swapping back and forth between them, that also just adds so much variety and flavor to the play space that, yeah, there's just some magical blend happening here that didn't hit me with the last couple.
Yeah, so interesting, because I personally like this is the kind of game that I really enjoyed. Firstly, absolutely, no question about that. And I really remark its construction.
Yeah.
Being like, holy shit, man. Imagine what it took to build this. Imagine what it took technically, artistically, like the performances from each of the actors, like just all of it. You're just like, damn, man, everything that you did here, the craftsmanship on display is like second to none, right? But at the same time, I found it, I didn't click with it as much as I clicked with the first two. I really didn't. Yeah, I think there were some things there, particularly on the story front, which we can't spoil, but there were definitely some story decisions that I was like, oh, this part really isn't clicking with me. And some part where I was like, again, can't spoil, but I'm like, whoa, this story is getting pretty wild. Not sure I agree with how these people are reconciling their differences without spoiling anything specific. But yeah, I think those things didn't quite click for me as much. I think as well, the open world stuff, which I think would be really interesting to talk about some more. You know, there's diversity within it, right? Mm-hmm. At one point, you're going to collect little spider bots, and another time you're beating up bad guys on a rooftop and whatever. But it all still feels quite homogenous despite that diversity, I feel, especially given that I've played a lot of that in the past. So it was nice to just dip into some of it, but I did a lot less of that this time around because it felt quite familiar. And I'm like, I've already seen a lot of what this has to offer. I'm going to keep going with the main story. Thank you very much. You know? So
well, it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, Ralph, because this time around, in my opinion, the side quests and like the kind of the encountering of things is the most streamlined process it's ever been out of all of them. Yeah. Like it's all of it feels light. All of it feels quick. All of it feels super like well earned and very easy to get through, as opposed to like, we're going to have several mini quests or many, you know, they're everywhere. It feels so much more about like taking a break from the main story just to like, again, kind of like, hey, we just had a huge story beat. That was a lot.
Sure.
Branch out and go do something fun. Only one or two things, not 15, not 300, just like one or two things. Go check it out. And if you don't want to do that, go right back into the story. And that was super refreshing to me, just to like let the player easily decide for themselves what to do next.
I was going to say they're frictionless. The side stuff for me is frictionless. Like you can be swinging, you can be on a phone call with someone, and then you just quickly go take a picture, and it's like no skin off your nose. The game will go, pause that conversation. You do that, pop in, pop out. There you go. I think that's what I like about that.
I agree with that. I agree with all of that. And I think you've used words like, Gerard used words like streamlined, and you've used frictionless. But I'm like, well, I don't necessarily want it to be super streamlined or frictionless. Like I kind of want to catch on things and be fair. Oh shit, man, this is really cool. And I think as well, we need to be clear because there's a delineation between what I would call like side content, which is like, there are side quests in this game where, you know, Peter and Miles are doing stuff to help out people and it has some story to it. And they're structured side missions, right? And then there's the open world stuff, which is just like, go and beat up bad guys on a roof.
Oh,
know?
I see what you're saying. Gotcha.
Oh, yeah. I was talking about the open world stuff for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, but again, So in that regard, I do agree that the side quest stuff is actually more fleshed out this time around, and for sure, I was actually engaging with that stuff, and I enjoyed that. But I think the open world stuff, there's a lot more of that on offer than there is that curated side content. And for me personally, none of that was particularly interesting, or none of it really felt like a big step up over the previous game. And that's the part that I was like, oh, I'm not really interested in doing much more of this. Do you know what I mean?
I feel like they present it in such a smooth way, though, where you're not looking at the map, going around like, okay, where's this other backpack? I'll go collect that. Blah, 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 blah. They do a really good job of like, just focus on the world. We'll have some visual signifier for you. Like there's going to be a spider bot over here. It's going to be radiating kind of a rainbow orb. You can go this way, or the photo spots will be glowing green like that. And yeah, I found like some of those bigger missions from the Friend app that you get, I was genuinely surprised by where they go with some of those. There's some pretty big stuff in there. I've really been impressed by the range of side content here.
Also, dumb thing I didn't figure out before it was too late because of my dumb completion brain. If you upgrade in the skill tree the ability to track where the little drop crates are, like on your mini map, it also shows the location of where all the spider bots are. And I did not do that. I just literally flew all over the place to find them all, and then I found out afterwards that was a thing.
Don't do what I do, and I've been doing, which was using the tech parts to unlock all the suits and all of the suit visual changes, because that's the same stuff that upgrades your actual, like your health and your damage.
Yes,
and I was
that's
like,
right,
man, I can't. I'm still on like 100 health.
To your credit, Lucy, I did the exact same thing.
Okay, good.
No regrets, because at some point in the game you unlock these combat challenges that are all super challenging, but doing them over and over again gives you rewards in those parts. And so that's where I was like, okay, time to beef up the boys. And that's where I got super powerful and upgraded all of my moves and my health from that. But yes, I agree with you. And it didn't ruin it. It was still fun.
Yeah. No, I know. Sure. I think in terms of, to Ben's point, like I liked Miles more than I liked Spider-Man 2018. But I think in this one, there's just something, I think certainly the performances are just kind of like another step above. I feel like everyone is bringing it, but also it's taking way more time to have these sort of quiet moments without all the bombastic action. And, we just had that interview with Bryan, and he said how much they love Naughty Dog. And there is a whole section in that game, which is basically the Halloween shop from Last of Us Left Behind,
right,
with the characters. And I was playing through that the other day, and I was like, oh man, this really feels like that moment. Like this is just a moment amongst characters having a good time. And so I really appreciate that, because I think as well, I've spoken at length about how fed up I am of Marvel, because every time the stakes are always so high, and there's only so much you can be excited about that, and how, and so I really appreciated that in Spider-Man 2, they kind of kept bringing it down to just these personal relationships a lot, which I really liked. I also really liked the character of Harry and like MJ way more in this one. And
yeah, I definitely agree. I think there was a really, sorry Ben to cut you off just quickly.
No,
there was a really nice scene in the amusement park, Coney Island. And it was just like just friends hanging out, and they really nailed that. Very few games do friends hanging out in a way that isn't weird or awkward, and that I think they really nailed that scene for sure.
No.
Yeah, it's like the first big scene with Harry where it's like, hey, let's establish that we're friends. Like it's largely a game about friendships, a bunch of other themes in there as well. But like they set that hook so hard. Like second they made clear the direction they were going for like those two establishing their friendships, like you got me so good. I love this little sequence. It's awesome.
I totally agree. That was definitely a real highlight in the game.
We were just talking about Bryan, and one of the things I said to him, which I still think about since I've completed the game, is that this game is about people not communicating to each other. There's so much of this, like, man, if Harry said this to Peter, they'd be on such a better moment. Or like if Miles said this to Peter, if Peter spoke to Miles, if Peter spoke to MJ, if Miles spoke to his mom, like
Craven to Jonah. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like if they just, and it's because that's what life is, right? It's just like this, like we get mad at people, we get mad at each other because like, and we don't know how to deal with our emotions and our feelings. And there's a high schooler who's Spider-Man who is more mature than most of the characters in this game. And that's by design, because it's like we all grow up and we're still just as immature and just as ignorant as we were when we were 16, 15 years old. And that game like kind of puts that in you. Like Peter makes choices that's like, that's what an 18-year-old kid would do. That's what Miles would do. And Miles at times is like, I'm the adult mentor in this relationship. And it's like, they kind of, no pun intended, kind of sling their way through that back and forth. I just thought was so cool.
Oh God, yeah. It does such a good job in the beginning of establishing the classic Spider-Man thing of just the push and pull of my real life. I'm going through some challenges. I need to focus on this. Oh, I can't because there's a Spider-Man duties, which, to be fair, Lucy, maybe you're sick of Spider-Man because we have certainly absorbed a lot of Spider-Man content in our lives, but still like the first third of this game, it's like, I've rarely seen it done better for just feeling that like, oh God, does he have to be Spider-Man right now? But them and those two working together, like, just especially in combat, having Miles swing by and knock a guy out and keep on going, like just the bond of those two and how positive they are and how hard they just both agree, like we have to fight. We have to be just a phenomenon of positivity in this city at all times. Like it God, it really got me. It was just perfect. But to your point, Ralph, I mean, I do agree that without spoiling anything, like the second half of the story, I was much less into than the first half. But still, I enjoyed how it all wrapped up.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Absolutely. I think as well, sorry, go Gerard.
I was gonna say, I feel dumb because I was like, I was the piece of candy guy. I was like, ooh, this one, ooh. And I'm not a big Marvel guy. Like I'm not. I don't do comics. Like the MCU and these games are like the most that I go. Right. So for me, I was like, ooh, this is so like I was plugged in the entire time.
For sure.
Sorry, Ralph.
No, that's fine. I was actually curious. What did you guys think of the wingsuit?
Yeah,
because I had thoughts about the wingsuit.
Oh, I haven't seen your review yet. As I made it very obvious yesterday in the Discord.
Lucy asked me yesterday, "Have you played Spider-Man?" I'm like, "Yes, Lucy, I have. Here's a link to my review. Thank you very much for your support." You know,
busy.
So, you were in New York watching Titanic. That's right. You know?
I was doing ground research for Spider-Man. Thank you.
Totally. Yeah, the wingsuit. I was like, it's. I think so. Basically, me personally, I just started using the wingsuit all the time because I was like, well, this is clearly the best way to travel. It's the fastest. It's the most convenient. It's readily available. There's no restrictions on it whatsoever. So I'm just going to wingsuit everywhere. And after a while, I was like, this doesn't feel quite right because I felt like I was playing more a Superman game than a Spidey game. You know, I really feel like web swinging is so core to the fantasy. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I actively started forcing myself to stop using the wingsuit and actually swing. And I was like, this is definitely better. So I really like the wings, by the way. They feel fantastic. I think the way they've dialed them in is awesome. You know, like the feedback that you get when you're really flying, you know, slipstream, it's awesome. But at the same time, I was very much like, if you had just limited the wingsuit to the air tunnels as like a means of rapid transportation across the city, I was like, I think that would have been better because I think being as readily available as they are, I think they erode the fantasy a little bit.
But they're
optional. At the same time, I know they're optional. I know that. But the thing is, it's so convenient. They're so fast. They're just a little press of a button away, you know? And so it's that kind of thing where it's like you give a player the chance to do something that's easier and faster, they're going to take it, you know? And so you're right. It's totally optional. And it was to the point where I actually stopped using it. But I'm like, should it be like this? I don't think so, personally. I think Spider-Man 3 should probably like ease back on that a little. Because for me, that was one thing where I was like, I don't think that's dialed in quite right.
I don't know. I find I'm at a point where I don't exclusively use one or the other. I mix and match depending on where I am and if there is a big gust of wind or something in the environment. But for me, it is matching the sort of ebb and flow of Batman Arkham City when you're gliding and you're like dive down and swoop back up. And then, you know, in Batman, you've got the grappling hook to really propel you forward. And that's what I ended up using the web swinging for. And so I feel I get what you're saying, but I think just the way that I've been playing it, it's like, it's more giving myself a piece of candy rather than waiting for the game to do it. Because I think because I've not been using fast travel at all. And so I love just exploring the city and swinging around it. But I think if you swing too much, you'll get bored. And so then I use it as a nice little bit of variety. And then I go back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah. I definitely used it in tandem. Like I felt like the best way to get the best of both worlds was to use the web swinging and the web suit. And what I would often do is I would use the web swinging to get my momentum, and then I would use the web suit just to get those two like huge moves that like propel you high up in the sky and then forward. I'd use those back to back, and then I would just glide all the way because I'd be too high above the city skylines at that point. And so I would just glide all the way through. Then once a building came by, I'd go back to swinging. And at that point, if you upgraded your Spider-Man a certain way, you can make it so you can refresh those skills even faster. So I just found myself constantly launching myself, web shooting, swinging, launching myself, I just kept doing that, and I just felt like I was speedrunning all over the city all the time. It was sick.
Yeah, there's no doubt, Ralph, though, it is goofy. Like, it is a weird gamey thing to turn this game into Superman 64 at times. We were just flying through a city and flying through the rings, you know, like, but then again, especially you got to be able to cross the river, and so they had to do something. So having these wind tunnels, it's natural, right?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And look, and it's really, I think, is a testament to the polish in this game. When you're complaining about, like, I think one part of it is too good,
right?
And it shouldn't be quite as good as it. Don't you guys think? Like, I think if that's the worst thing we're complaining about when it comes to Spidey, like, they're doing all right.
Oh, hang on, I do have a legitimate complaint.
Oh,
here we go.
I hate the feel of them when they walk. I feel like they.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I know what you mean by that.
They galumph.
Sure. I don't.
What's the word?
Galumph.
Galumph?
Galumph.
Yeah, galumph. Is this maybe this is a British word that
just
like
LUMPF?
It's an onomatopoeia. We get the idea.
Yeah. It just feels like
it definitely features heavily in Dr. Seuss books, by the way.
Okay. Now it's setting in. I got it. Okay.
It's I just feel when you are fighting or web swinging, there is such a great fluidity, and as soon as you take that away from me, if I'm walking around or there are certain situations where sometimes it's a little too I said this about Assassin's Creed a couple weeks ago, so like a little bit too sticky on edges or something, and it's like it's not as fluid as it could be. And I think especially there is a lot of bloody walking around in this game, like taking you out of being of Spider-Man and just being Peter or Miles or whoever. So that's my one like tiny complaint.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, whenever you get on a rooftop, sometimes it's hard to land on a rooftop because you got so much momentum and you're just trying to like, I just want to land there. And then Spider's like, nope, I'm going to swing over to this other place. It's like, fucking hell. And then when you get on the rooftop, you're right. It is this very jarring sensation of like, okay, now my feet are on the ground. And maybe it's intentional. Maybe they were looking to do that.
They hunch him like
both sort of,
they go bow-legged a little bit. It's weird.
Yeah. I agree. It doesn't feel quite right. I agree with you.
I mean, not to just say, but it was really hard from the developer's point of view, because that's totally fair that, there is, when you're in small rooms, sometimes doing stealth stuff, it's like, I just want to swing, but I can't quite figure it out.
No.
But just, I think the ability for this game to have you go as fast as you can and have, the animation work in this game, I think it's the best indie game I've ever played. Like, unbelievable stuff happening here. But to be able to go that fast and then also to be able to zoom in that tight and have you navigate somebody's apartment, like that is unbelievable. That's happening in the same game. And like, without spoiling anything, like there's an awesome fight in the beginning of this game here. And there's a moment where you get like thrown across the city and like you're going so fast through all the buildings. And it's like, it's just bizarre the speed that you're moving. That's
exactly the point that Bryan mentioned in the interview. Yeah, he talks about the throw in that fight. Like the technology that underpins that throw is basically would have been impossible before PS5 and what it can do in terms of streaming assets. And it's like, well, yeah, absolutely, you can feel that. So
you're moving the player from one side of the map to the other in an instant.
Yeah. It's crazy.
What do y'all think? In my mind, this is the best PS5 exclusive game. I know it's not the deepest bench here, but it seems like a slam dunk for me.
But like, what other actual exclusive PS5 games are there at this point?
Ratchet and Clank.
Ratchet and Clank.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Ratchet and Clank is one. Is there another one?
Astrobot.
Demon's Souls.
Demon's Souls. Okay, yep. Astrobot.
PS5 exclusive.
Because Horizon Forbidden West was on PS4 as well as was
Gran Turismo. Final Fantasy 16.
Oh yeah, 16. Yeah, of course.
16 is a good benchmark.
Oh, okay. Well, I think this is a much better
coming
game
to PC later.
16, but
did Ragnarok come out on PS4?
Ragnarok was on PS4.
It was,
yes, it was. So it's you're right. It's not a very deep bench, and I would say based on that, it is definitely the best. But like, I don't know, maybe, but is this the best game this year? The answer to that is obviously no, because Baldur's Gate 3 exists, right?
That's right.
But is it in contention for best game of the year? I think it's up there. Like, I think a lot of people are going to have this as their game of the year for sure.
It is going to sell gangbusters as well.
Oh my God.
Yes. Yes.
And can you,
definitely.
like, it's so hard to just show a clip of a game and have somebody say, how much does the console cost? I will pay anything. But I feel like these Spider-Man games, and this one in particular, it's like you see this running in a commercial. I mean, if I was a kid, are you kidding me? I need whatever system can run this, specifically.
Yeah. That's so true. That's very true.
I will say, speaking as the completionist, as that's my job, this is the most fun one to complete. It's so easy. It's so flippin' easy to complete, and the game begs you to do it all the way through. If you thought the first two were easy, this is even easier, and it's a very well earned platinum. It's not difficult by any means. It's just fun, and that's a good platinum trophy in my opinion. Are you having a good time? Cool. Are you done? Sick. There's a couple of different things to do. Like, I beat the game, and then I had one activity left to do. I did it, and I got the platinum, and
Nice.
it was based around like a lock. Like, that's supposed to happen. So I was like, great. I completed the game without even thinking about completing the game, and that was so fun.
Yeah, even I think Kinda Funny was saying this is the first time they've ever reviewed something where every single person had the platinum.
Yeah.
Which is
pretty
nuts.
nuts.
Yeah.
That is pretty nuts.
It was,
but I think it also there's. Sorry, you go, man.
No, it is. I enjoyed the scope of it so far, but like I finished the main campaign and I was doing some side stuff, but not too much. And I finished it in probably around 16 hours. Like, don't expect this as a 100-hour open world game. You know, it's like I'm now at 19 hours and I'm at 69% completion to give some sense of where we're at.
Yeah. It took me 31 hours to complete.
Okay.
And it was a very casual 31 because I loved just swinging around and getting in fights and getting fast travel points by solving nearby crimes. Like, I took my sweet time.
I think that the Spider-Man games has such important lessons to teach about completion trophies.
Yep.
Because I firmly believe that the way that most completion trophies exist ruins video games. I know so many people disagree with that because they're like, no, it forces me to play the game in ways that I would never otherwise play it. It's like, well, do you mean annoying ways that are shitty and piss you off? Then yeah, absolutely, they do that. Or that it makes me grind the 20-hour game for 160 hours.
I've
like, great, I'm sure you'll love it even more.
In my entire life than right now.
So, I mean,
on
like,
this goddamn podcast.
The fact that like this game is just like, no, we're gonna give you the thing, and then we're gonna give you a little more of it, and then that's your game done. I'm like, yeah, obviously that's how it should be. Thank you, you know? So I haven't done the platinum for this, but like, and I'm because there's a lot of games to review right now, but like maybe I will go back one day and do this because it's fun to play as Spider-Man and just swing around town. And if that's the excuse that I need to just like top off the game, great, done, you know?
One of the not to get spoiler territory, but there's two trophies that are about like visiting an old place from previous locations. And that was really great because you just have to think about what happened to these characters in these moments in the previous games.
Right.
And those were the only two trophies where I was like, I have to actually think about my experience in the first two games and what I did. And it felt really cool because I was like, oh, it's in this district in this place. Yeah, I wonder if that's what it's talking about. Go to this place. No, not that one. Let me try this one. And you start like rethinking about the story of Miles Morales and Spider-Man. You go, oh, of course that's what this is. That was just such a cool thing because, you know, the world has changed. Like, yes, this is the same New York from the first two games stitched together with more area, but you have to actually think about cross streets and locations of the and previous set pieces because so much has happened in the chaos between all three games.
Yeah, I think it was like the first time that Danica's podcast came on in the game. It was this reminder of like, oh, that's right. Like they're ramming the two games together. It's like, if you like the Miles Morales experience, you're going to have a lot of that. And there's a lot of, you know, callbacks to his journey and stuff. And it's like, oh, and then 2018 Spider-Man, it's just all fused into one beautiful package here.
Yeah.
I love J. Jonah. Whenever he comes on, man, I'm like, yeah, more J. Jonah, just getting mad and just being pissed off and whinging all the time. I love it. I can't get enough of it.
He has like a real Vince McMahon vibe in this game.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Ben,
Oh yeah.
I love you. Yes.
Oh, I love you too, man.
Yeah. Exactly. He's got that like that schmarmy billionaire vibe, even though he just runs the Daily Bugle. Like,
Yeah. On the character front too, Kraven the Hunter, like just I'm kind of like you, Gerard, where it's mainly the movies. I've read some comics, but I know everyone's always like, oh, Kraven's such a great villain, never really been used in a big way outside of the comics. And I love just encountering his storyline and him as a character throughout so much of this game. Like, I'm glad he got so much time in the spotlight because I thought it was a really compelling story. Just having him hunting down the villains while the Spider-Men are out there trying to redeem the villains at the same time. It's like, it's just a cool web, no pun intended, black.
We've done that a few times. We've had swinging, we've had web. No,
Forgive us, please.
As someone who's like very unfamiliar with Kraven the Hunter, I thought he was a super cool villain. Like acted really, really well, but like there's a certain sequence with him and his cronies that is one of those really way more memorable ones that I won't spoil here, but I think it's just a really cool sequence. Also, incredible teeth. I always find video game teeth to be weird. Kraven's teeth, unbelievable.
Venom's teeth, also impeccable, just beautiful.
impeccable.
They get a lot of screen time,
it.
don't they? They do. He really has to invest in them because of how visible they are. So that's
orthodontics.
He flosses regularly. So there you go.
The thing about Kraven that was really interesting is that it felt very Walter White-y in that, like, when he spoke, we listened.
Right.
Like whenever he was on camera, he was like, I'm going to talk and I've got you for 15 seconds and this is my scene and this is what I'm doing. Find the fucking Spider-Man. I don't care. Go. Like, had this reverence to him to the point where when Venom shows up, you're like, oh man, this is whose attention do I give? Who is the superior one here? It's just so interesting.
Well, the answer is Kraven, because every time he comes on screen, he demands presence, but at the same time, there's also an awesome horn blast. Just, his music is so good.
The Kraven theme was actually very good, because I was actually quite on a different page with Kraven personally. I didn't love him as villain. I think he was a great catalyst for events. Like he really made things happen in the story. Really interesting things happened as a result of what he was doing that I was keen on. But him personally, and I think it's like, there's that through line with the great Spidey villains where a lot of them could kind of like walk through the front door of Peter Parker's house and be welcomed, because that, you know what I mean? Because they have these alter egos, they have whatever. And it creates this tension that reflects Peter Parker's life, and the Spider-Man life. It's that and obviously that can't be the case for every villain he fights, obviously, sure.
Right.
But for me personally, there was nothing really with Kraven that kind of replaced that. And so as a result, like I said, I really loved the things that Kraven made happen, but I wasn't in love with Kraven himself, and really much like, I'm really like, oh yeah, I need to see more of this guy personally. But yeah, cool teeth though, really great.
Really great teeth.
Great teeth.
Great teeth.
It's just there's so many sequences in this game where it's like, I just need to capture this on my PS5 so I can go back and look at it. Like there's a whole like escape sequence in particular that is just incredibly well done.
Yes.
Just the amount of work that's going into every sequence here, mind blowing.
We talked about that in a roundabout way with Bryan as well.
Okay.
We don't want to spoil it. We don't want to spoil it, but there is a sequence, and it really it touches on different parts of the Marvel universe, surprisingly. It also touches on different parts of Insomniac's history as a developer, surprisingly. And then when you experience the sequence for yourself, you'll know what we mean. So but yeah, that was a real standout moment for sure.
Any other closing thoughts on Spider-Man 2, boys?
I was gonna say,
you go.
No, Ralph, you go.
After you.
You go.
Okay. I was gonna say I would be really interested to see how much people want a shakeup for the next one, if there is a next one, ? Because you often hear that refrain like, oh, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I don't think anything as part of this formula is broken. I think all of it is either good or great or incredible. It's all somewhere on that spectrum. But we've had 3 of these games now, and I would be really interested to see how you could shake it up on the next one and really like take some big swings narratively or in its well-designed stuff or whatever. And I'm sure some people are going to be like, no, we don't want it. That's not what Spider-Man's for. And I'm like, I understand that. That's fair enough. But I am ready for Insomniac to go a little wild in the next chapter and really, see what they can do with it.
Well, do you think with where they leave things, are you feeling optimistic about that?
Not particularly.
Oh, really?
Only because it's hard to talk about it without spoiling anything. But I would love to see some, as I said, really some big plays, a Spider-Man story that we've never seen before, and some major changes to that gameplay format. Again, not because I think what he is here is bad, but just because I'd be really interested to see what else they've got cooking. And I think as fantastic as Spider-Man 2 is, I think it's like incremental improvement without any part of it being like this massive step up or this really big surprise factor. Because I think I talked about God of War Ragnarok in my review, where I feel like its open world design, what it did with that and those semi-open worlds, I think was fantastic and a real step up. And I think in particular, like its story and its characters and the way that game was written was like remarkable, you know, and it just totally knocked you on your ass. If you were invested in that saga, then like what a conclusion to it, you know? And I think Spider-Man 2 was a little bit safe, you know, for how excellent it was. And I would really like to see Insomniac just totally cut loose on number 3 and take it weird places.
Yeah, it's a weird thing where they're kind of penalized from nailing it so much out of the gate, right? Where it's like, you want the ultimate Spider-Man fantasy, you got it in 2018, you got another in 2020. Yep. Here's one that I think is better. You know, we'll see what everybody else thinks. Yeah. But it's like, what do you want? Spider-Man to dig underground? Like, what else can he do? It's an awesome New York. And
yeah,
an
absolutely.
Awesome
I want Spider Mole. Wait, Mole Man. That's what I want. Mole Man.
I live here while you live up there. Well, the thing that I've been kind of because my video just came out today when this podcast airs, and the whole thing that I kind of centralized on is like, because of the Sam Raimi films, will forever have, with great power comes great responsibility imbued in kind of like our vernacular when it comes to Spider-Man. We never say that catchphrase ever again because of Uncle Ben, but like that is clearly all of the themes of all the Spider-Man movies to a degree, right? But I think this is the first one that made me go, with great power comes great consequence. And that's what you see throughout this entire game, is that no matter how happy Miles and Peter can become in their normal lives or as Spider-Man, there is always something of consequence waiting around the corner. And for many cases, it's Kraven. For many cases, it's Venom. And in this case, like, there's an incredible scene with Mary Jane and that whole sequence where you're like, oh my God, like this is an open therapy session of Peter Parker. Everyone grab a notebook and sit on a couch, and you're like, no, like it's like that. You seep all of that throughout the game, and that's why I think this is my favorite one, hands down, just because it's the most real. As even though we're talking about, you know, gigantic Sandman and symbiote stuff.
Yep. And special shout out to Laura Bailey's MJ, because the way her voice cracks when she yells Peter, shatters me in half. It's so effective.
Oh, it's so good.
So good.
Yeah, Yuri Lowenthal as well, I think.
Oh yeah.
Oh man,
rings it.
Oh yeah.
The symbiote thing that he was doing, that was working for me big time. I was a fan.
That was good.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Oh,
right.
All right.
Settle down, Lucy. Settle down, Lucy. I'm
You
just
said
saying
it was
I really like
working,
his
it was really
performance,
working.
okay? I need to make that face.
Well, those are our thoughts on Spider-Man 2. We actually have a user question all about Spider-Man as well. So thank you to Blake for this one. If you have your own user question, email it to us, contact@friendspersecond.com. Who wants to read this one? Ralph, why don't you give this one a read?
Sure. Let me get my run sheet up, which should be here. Got it. Cool. Blake, he says, with the release of Spider-Man 2, PlayStation has released a seemingly awesome experience. However, I can't get over the fact that PlayStation formula for its story-driven games is beginning to feel a little stale. There are great stories in these games, but I get less and less excited about these releases as time has gone on. What are your thoughts, and what can Sony do to provide a little more innovation for their future titles? Interesting question. Yeah, what do you guys think? It's like kind of like a two-parter. He says the story's feeling stale, the story-driven games is feeling stale, and what could Sony do to mix things up?
Well,
do you agree that the story stuff is feeling stale?
I don't.
I don't.
Yeah.
I feel like
Sorry, Blake.
Sorry, Blake.
No, I think that's fair. I understand the critique of like, okay, a lot of third-person games with weapon wheels. I understand that. Sad dad motif. I get that. But we're talking about like 3 games, everybody. Like it's not exactly every single release.
Horizon, Days Gone.
Sure.
God of War.
God of War, Last of Us.
Last of Us. Spider-Man, which obviously is more actiony than those are sort of cinematic-y games, I guess. This is Ghost of Tsushima.
Sure, yep.
What else? I'm sure we're forgetting some other ones in that portfolio.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's at least 6 games which fall into that broad category of first party Sony
that's
stuff.
Fair. Yeah, I always just feel like, you know, maybe I focus too much on criticisms for The Last of Us Part 2, and it's not a perfect game by any means, but like that is one of the boldest AAA releases I feel like ever. Like that is a risky, weird game that they released. And so this idea of like, oh, Sony playing it safe. It's like, just a couple years ago, they released a very big swing and it paid off. And so there's still other Sony projects out there that are exciting. And so I'm just so thankful that Spider-Man 2, it's not a living game. It's not even a co-op game. As someone who just loves single player games, I feel like we should be writing to Jim Ryan on his way out the door to thank him for not forcing them to make this a co-op game or a Gotham Knights equivalent,
That comes later, though. I mean, certainly a part of his tenure was the drive to live services, and he won't be there to sort of park that. But anyway, that's a whole other separate discussion, I suppose. So I wonder, actually, maybe that is part of the discussion in terms of we're saying like, we're a bit tired of these Sony, whatever. Well, two things. First of all, Jim Ryan did say that the bedrock foundation of Sony is going to continue to be graphically rich, beautiful looking cinematic action games. Like that is almost a direct quote for what he said, right? Number two is that he has been driving in a very big way towards standing up a number of live services within Sony's portfolio. And in fact, the majority of Sony's current research and development dollars are going towards the creation of live service titles. So that's a pretty big shift. And so maybe Blake's question in a few years' time is going to be, I miss all the Sony single player games. Now they're all just the live services. Why don't we go back to the good times, I don't know how they're going to navigate that that shift. But personally, I feel like the stories that Sony are telling with these games is still compelling. And Spider-Man and God of War Ragnarok in particular, I didn't like The Last of Us personally, but I absolutely could respect what it was going for in terms of its ambition and, you're right, the swings it was willing to take. I think that they're still writing great stories within Sony Studios, and so I'm okay with them to continue down this path for a variety of reasons, but not least of all the fact that it's better than the live service alternative, which I think we're eventually going to have to meet pretty soon.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Ralph. And I think the other thing. Sorry, this didn't mean to cut you off. I think the thing that prior to kind of even God of War getting the 2018 reboot, we kind of saw a lot of the multiplayer aspects of what was kind of coming with the PlayStation 3 generation, right? Last of Us had its own multiplayer aspect. Resistance was all multiplayer. You saw a lot of like tying gamers together via online games, and you kind of saw a little bit of a drought of only a few people who were doing these huge story-driven epics, right? And it feels like Sony just kind of doubled down on it and said, hey, we know we got Last of Us, we know we've got Uncharted with Naughty Dog, but we did have Infamous with Sucker Punch, but I think there was a bit of a lull where we didn't have a lot of that, and now it's like Sony's big export is these single player first epic story game, first perspective, only one player story games, and I think they work really well. And it'd be weird if all of them were telling the same story. It'd be weird if all of them had the same motifs. God of War is about a father and son, and at its core, a lot of fish out of water type stuff. So I don't think it's getting stale at all. If anything, they're getting more mature and taking not like bigger swings, but different swings. Expectations, I feel like, have been a bit different.
Yeah, especially when you think of, they released Dreams just a couple of years ago, everybody. You want to talk about weird stuff coming from Sony. Yeah. You can't get much weirder than Dreams, and I love it. Tren, that weird game within Dreams that Media Molecule made, just released this year, and it's a cool, funky experience. Team Asobi, their hopefully new platform will be coming out soon that'll feel a little bit different. Third person still, but I don't think the robot's son is going to be kidnapped or anything,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my biggest my biggest not complaint, because it's kind of Sony's first party lineup is an embarrassment of Richard's in a weird way, but if you think back to maybe 2014, 2015, it felt like there was way more coming from Sony. And I think my complaint at the moment is that, because they are investing so heavily in these big AAA games, that it just feels like we wait a very, very long time between each one. And so when they do come out, they're usually almost amazing. But I kind of miss the Sony who would be if not creating, at least the synonymous publisher or the synonymous platform. So, I miss the days of Journey, when Media Molecule was really finding its feet, and Unfinished Swan, and when Sony was really behind indies and smaller weird games. I kind of miss that because it feels like they've way more focused on being the blockbuster guys and gals.
I agree with that in part. I think part of that is obviously just the overall landscape has changed.
For sure.
And it's now about the blockbusters, game development timelines have blown out, budgets are gigantic, the risks are huge for these studios where one like flop can sink you. And so there's that natural tendency towards that bigger stuff. But at the same time, I mean, I do think that Sony is doing some stuff on the flip side to that. So, for example, you got House Marquee or House Mark. How's it Marquee?
Marquee? House Mark.
Yeah.
They did Returnal, right?
Guess,
and that's cool. That's that's a thing. And then they're willing to pick up and they're willing to make content. They're not developing it themselves, but they're picking a library that they think is interesting, like Ghostwire Tokyo, for example, where they looked at this weird game from TangoWorks and they're like, okay, let's get that in our portfolio. And that's something, right? I mean, there's Pacific Drive is coming, which is a really interesting looking driving survival horror game, which I saw a behind closed door session of a while ago. It looks fantastic. I'm just going down. I mean, obviously they not published, but they sort of did a partnership with Death Stranding, and they backed Kojima on that. You know what I mean? There's,
I mean, Humanity, like the puzzle game Humanity released this year, which feels so much like an old school PlayStation thing. Yeah,
and like even you mentioned Where's Journey, and there's a game coming out called Sword of the Sea, which is basically Journey. You know what I mean? Like totally. You look it up and you'll be like, well, that's Journey. You know? So,
wow, that is Journey.
Yeah,
that's the Journey.
Oh, it's from Giant. Oh, it's Giant Squid.
Yeah. That's right, exactly. So I think you're right in that part, but I think the way because I think a lot of that stuff they were doing before was their own dollars on the line.
I think as well there is also a perception issue because they would have whole PlayStation like in-person conferences where it would just be like PlayStation Indies was a whole thing.
Yes,
I agree. You know, when you had something like the Vita, which was the perfect vehicle for it, whereas now it just feels like the oxygen in the room is taken up by, if there is a God of War coming out, that will, and they do, to their credit, they have state of plays and everything, but I think it's just the whole industry has changed. The way we consume and look at media has changed. And I think that's, I can't be mad at Sony for that, but it just feels like a fundamental shift. And that's my only complaint.
I agree. But at the same time, I would say that I do think we need to give credit where it's due. And I think Xbox are also doing a similar thing when it comes to finding interesting games that they want to put their money behind and publishing them or going into marketing partnerships or making them Xbox exclusive or whatever. So I think that stuff exists, but you're right. It does seem like I think those efforts were more core to the identity of those publishers back in the day. Now it feels like an investment exercise almost that they do, like an auxiliary part. Like the core of Sony now is these big giant AAA studios making these big giant AAA games, whereas before it could have been a more experimental type of like first party game that they would be willing to develop themselves, you know? So,
I mean just look at the Marvel Studios-esque PlayStation Studios.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, thing.
Very
That's
true.
It's certainly I mean, everyone has got one of those now. BioWare has one of those now.
Do they?
They had it on the Mass Effect remaster. And I was like, that's kind of, but it was just Mass Effect characters, but it was like weird.
Okay. And they had one Sonic Dark Brotherhood character just hidden in the back in there too.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Not a good way of thinking about it, but like a good way of summarizing it. Spider-Man 2 is not the only huge release coming out this week. Gerard, you and Ralph have been playing Super Mario Wonder.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I like this tone. I know nothing.
Yeah.
I know nothing about
also
it.
know nothing other than the 15 minutes I played at PAX. So lay it on us. Is it good?
It's a very curated 15 minutes, Lucy. They only made you play what they want to play. Because even the stages before that are like in the opening area are even cooler than the ones that they let you play.
Oh, man. There's some of these levels. I'm interested to hear your thoughts because I think you're much better you would be far more qualified to properly judge a Mario title than I am, because I am a casual Mario enjoyer. Like, Mario was literally my first ever video game, as we'll talk about later in the show. But and I've always played them over the years, but I've always been drawn more to different experiences. You know, like more actiony games, and ultimately RPGs were like my big gateway drug to becoming the, you know, fucking nerd that I am today. But the platformer side of things, I know that's very much your wheelhouse. So I'd really like to hear what you think about Mario Wonder.
Oh man. Well, first off, this feels like New Super Mario Brothers and Yoshi's Island were mom and dad, and they came together and they had a kid, and this kid is called Super Mario Brothers Wonder. It is an aesthetic that you won't expect all the way through and through. There are stages that have musical motifs you are just a part of. Like you get the Wonder Seed, and then suddenly, like in the bottom right corner of the screen, it's like the name of the song, and then like a musical plays, and you are like, and Mario's like, what the hell? And he's just trying
you need to like some of them you need to jump in time with the music to be able to progress
like
the level.
Rayman Legends type thing. That's awesome.
A little bit, yeah, but it's more like every single stage has a Wonder Seed, and what that Wonder Seed does is different almost every single time. You have no idea what's going to happen when you touch the Wonder Seed, and it almost ultimately always ends up in the physics changing, the camera angle changing, the mechanics of the game changing,
music, everything.
Yeah, it is just, you keep thinking yourself every time you get further in the game, how are they going to do it this time? And every time you're like, I didn't know that's where they were going, but that was really freaking cool.
So does every level just feel like countdown to Wonder Seed? Is that all you can think about? Is
No,
definitely
not. No. Absolutely not. So first of all, every single level is basically totally different from every single other level. That's the first thing you need to understand, okay? Which sounds ridiculous and impossible, but it's basically true.
Visually speaking, aside from like you're in a world that's about this theme, almost every stage visually distinct looks different.
Awesome.
And we'll often have new enemies that were not in other levels.
Yep.
And will implement some random mechanic that will only appear in that one level and then never appear again throughout the rest of the game. It's like, so that's the first part, just understanding that baseline diversity across the levels. And all of those are already, you know, amazing. Like already like, fuck man, these rule. And then within each of those levels is a Wonder Seed, which could essentially be considered like another level, like, because it remixes so much of it. It's like you could have just, and these Wonder Seed things only really last probably, I'm gonna say 60 to 90 seconds between when you get the Wonder Seed and when
some last forever, depending on the level.
Sure. Yeah, but on the whole, it's like 60 to 90 seconds where you have an objective that you need to complete while the Wonder Seed is active. And then it goes back to being the normal level. But Nintendo could have taken that 60 to 90 seconds and stretched it out to an entire level, or it could have done what most other developers would have done and taken those mechanics and made 5 or 6 different levels out of them, and that would be the baseline of your game. But Nintendo was so fucking like wasteful with their game design here.
Yes.
They will just stand up some random idea for literally 30 seconds that is incredible and then never touch it ever again.
Gone.
Awesome.
Because they've just got
Perfect.
too many ideas to get through. It's just like it's like WarioWare in terms of how rapidly it is flipping between things. Except instead of being like 5 to 10 seconds, it's realistically like, you know, 2 minutes to 5 minutes. But at that level of just like throwing out ideas and getting stuff out, it's wild. It's genuinely wild. And I, again, at not being a full-on hardcore Mario fan that can like, because I've played most of the Mario games, but I can't remember them vividly, you know?
This one you're gonna remember. This one is the one.
Just like, I'm just like, what the you know, I don't know. I always feel, because I play so many games, I feel very comfortable with couching my assessment of something relative to where it exists within the rest of the genre. Because if I play like an ARPG, I'm like, well, is this better or worse than Diablo 2 and by how much. I can't quite do that here because I don't have that knowledge. But what I will say is that just like, this isn't like amazing. It's just so amazing. It really is amazing. And I don't know if I'm maybe I haven't played enough Mario and this is how it often is, but I suspect it isn't. I suspect this is really fucking special.
But here's the thing, Ralph. We're talking about Mario in the last 10 to 15 years, at the very least, right?
Yeah.
The 2D side-scrolling aspect of Mario has been one of 2 games. New Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Maker, which is a combination of every 2D platformer game plus New Mario Bros. U and 3D World.
So wait, just to interrupt you, what was actually the last 2D Mario before New Super Mario Brothers?
As a franchise? Like as like an actual franchise, or like,
well, in any kind of the proper mainline 2D Mario game?
It'd be Yoshi's Island, if you want to count that. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Yoshi.
And when was that?
Super Nintendo.
Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah, so the big reveal about the new Mario Bros. As a series came along because Nintendo was like, hey, we're going to keep re-releasing Mario 1, 2, 3 and World on portables. People still love them on the Game Boy Advance. And then when they came to the DS and kind of the future of Mario, they were like, well, we've got the 3D titles. You got 64, you've got Sunshine and Galaxy's on the way. And so New Mario Bros. As a series was kind of like a, hey, look, we're coming back to our grassroots. Mario in this game can turn into a big version of himself because of the big shroom. And my New Mario Bros. 2, Mario's gold. It's all about collecting coins and money is everywhere. And then New Mario Bros. U is about the Wii U gamepad for some weird reason and poking platforms, and you can become a little acorn Mario kind of vibe, right?
Sure.
There hasn't really been a new Mario platformer. Like new Mario,
right.
Like Mario Brothers Wonder is the first true genuine platformer to move on from the new Mario Brothers series. Okay. And it already feels way different than anything that came before it.
Is it? I think.
Well, sorry, I mean, if you count 3D World is
sure,
and 3D World and 3D Land, but those aren't like 2D all the way through.
Yeah. Because I think obviously you think about the 3D Marios, and I think a lot of what was going on there, like they obviously have so much innovation in each individual component. They have a level which has lots of different ideas and secrets hidden throughout it, and I don't know. But even then, it feels. Big chunks of it feel cohesive because you enter these worlds, and then after that there are some rule sets established, and they kind of build on themselves sequentially over time, and you complete that world and then you move on to the next world. Mm-hmm. But again, this is just so much more rapid fire than that, where the worlds don't really mean that much because there can be so much variation within a single level within a single world. I think, did you guys play It Takes Two?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you know how quickly that game was just like spitting out ideas and just we're doing this and then we're doing that and we're doing that. This is like that, but like 5 times faster in terms of how it's churning through ideas, you know? And so that's why I'm finding it so difficult to really kind of just like make sense of it in my head. Yeah, honestly, it's incredible. I really think it's an absolute game of the year contender for me personally. It's not better than Baldur's Gate 3 for me personally, but I think, again, coming to what we said about Spidey, a lot of people are going to have it on their list. And I don't think people are ready for how good this is. I was not ready.
I am blown away.
Absolutely,
I'm blown away by what you guys are talking about. I mean, would you put it above Spider-Man 2?
Absolutely, for me personally, because again, I think so much of my enjoyment with modern games, I think, is about how much you surprise me. Because again, I play so many games, right?
I haven't gotten through Wonder enough. I'm about 50% done with the game. I am not. I'm not there
so
yet.
far. Do you think it's above Spidey for you personally in terms of enjoyment?
As a guy who was not really a big Spider-Man guy and then became one, it's pretty neck and neck at this point.
Right.
The most interesting thing about it, in my opinion, is it borrows a lot from what was established in things like Mario World and New Mario Bros, where, like, for instance, Special World has kind of been a term that's been tossed around for many years in the Mario legacy of things. In New Mario Bros specifically, and in Mario World, there's like a whole other separate zone where you go and you kind of play the hardest of the hard levels. In Mario Wonder, there's a similar aspect. but it's usually like a skill check about what you've played in the game so far. So I think there are like 6 or 7 worlds total in the game, and each world has an off-branch secret path that takes you to the special world. And when you go to the special world, it's time to buckle the fuck up, because it's going to be really, really tough. In the second special world, it's a rhythm level where the platforms at first are like showing you kindly, like, listen to the music, you have to move like this. And then as you get further, you're going to learn how to wall kick and wall jump. And then you're going on, and then the music's getting faster. And holy shit, there's lava rising above. And now the platforms are moving even faster. And now they're getting smaller. And now you gotta go, Mario. You have to fucking go. And it's like, you're playing it in real time going, oh, I see what you're, I have to go. And you have to just learn. And it's just so exciting because you've played levels like that in previous Mario games. And this game, there are levels that you play that teach you those mechanics. But in this specific skill check level, there's nothing else like it. And all of the levels have a star rating and a color rating with it. So it's it's like five red stars is like, or 4 or 5 red stars is like, that's pretty tough. What does purple star mean? Like, what is that kind of element? And it's designed to teach you, hey, this is going to be a harder stage. Just get ready to anticipate it. And one of the cooler mechanics about the game is the badge system. There are badges that you collect.
We haven't even talked about that.
The badge system is fascinating because it's going to create so many different layers of how to speedrun a stage, let alone how to equate to a stage you're struggling with. You don't need a badge to do anything, but you can get them.
A badge, by the way, is essentially a ability modifier, right? So one badge is you crouch for a second and you do an extra high jump. Another badge is you will throw out a vine that will literally kind of pull you to the nearest wall, right? There are other badges like sensor badges, which will highlight nearby secrets or will give you bonus coins when you defeat enemies, etc. So there are all these different badges that you could bring to bear to a level that are going to change the way, again, as you said, just completing it is one thing, but the speedrunning community the speedrunning that's going to come out of this is going to be insane. And also, we haven't even talked about like the power-ups in terms of there's the elephant, sure. And then there's a drill hat, the drill Mario, where you're wearing like a drill on your head and there's so many. So you combine the variation of these levels with the variation that comes inherent with the badges, with the variation that comes inherent with these power-ups. Because by the way, you can take a power-up from one level into another level. So it's not like those power-ups are curated for each level. Like you could hold on to the drill hat Mario through the entire game if you don't die. If you combine all of those variables together, and then we haven't even talked about the multiplayer stuff, by the way. There's all this shit you can do with other people where they're like, you can see their ghosts and they can resurrect you if you die, and you can race each other. And it's crazy, man. It's just amazing. I keep coming back to that, but like, it's wild how much they have packed into this video game. Like,
I haven't even been able to touch any of the online stuff because no one has, like, none of my friends, let alone like the internet around me, like no one's got the game because it's not out yet. Now it is. Everyone's playing it and figuring it out. But I'm very excited to check that stuff out because that was
it's nice because you can just drop these little signs, and if you drop them, the standees, and then if someone dies, they could become a ghost. But if you've dropped a standee and your games have synced up, then they can just touch your standee for a res, and so it just keeps them going. And it's just nice to be able to sort of collaborate together in that way. But obviously, you can also race your friends directly, and it's like, oh god. Oh, they
Nintendo, also man. They fixed the new Mario Bros multiplayer issue where like whenever you play Super Mario 3D World or New Mario Bros U, kind of the chaos is like picking up your brother and throwing him off a cliff. That's gameplay. That's fun.
It is, by the way. That absolutely is
still very fun.
It's fun until you're like, okay, let's play the game, and then you're like, well, I'm not trying to do that anymore, or I'm still going to keep doing that, and it's really annoying, right? In this case, older brother, younger brother, not fun. Youngest of 5, so I get it.
Eldest of 5.
There you go. That's why you see the conflicting perspectives. But what I will say is, if you're playing with people, nothing really gets in the way. It's only additive. No, so you're not
definitely
picking each other up and throwing them. Yeah, you can share power-ups, and if someone touches them, like, okay, you stole it, but it's no longer like the, hey, let's fuck our friends over and throw them off a cliff. It's like, hey, we're all in this boat together. We're trying to get to the end. It's crazy, it's chaotic, but it's fun in that way.
And like the we're talking about a lot of macro stuff as well, you know, but I think what is equally remarkable about this game is the micro attention to detail that exists.
Facial animations.
Like the facial animations of the Goombas when they get close to you versus when they're far away. Like where they sort of frown when they're within a few inches of you, whereas before they kind of have a blank expression. The way that like the music will change depending on which power up you've got active. So that the elephant, if you've got the elephant on, the theme is going to be the same, but it's going to be like a boom, 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 boom trumpet kind of thing versus a different sound if you've got the drill cap on. When you crouch down in certain sections, the music will like quieten down as a result of that to reflect that. You know, the amount of care and attention to detail that has gone into every single frame, every animation, every song, every moment of every, like, it's just, it really reminds me of Breath of the Wild. Sorry, Tears of the Kingdom. Because I think a lot of people are going to look at that game and they're like, it's kind of just Breath of the Wild 2, isn't it? It's like, no, it fucking isn't. Like when you really look at what that video game is, and what it took to create that thing, like a group of people who made all of that stuff work as well as it did, that is a game design miracle. That is why you saw like game developers all over Twitter in tears whenever they saw clips of Tears of the Kingdom being like, this shouldn't be allowed. How did they do this? It's impossible, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is that same kind of thing. When you really dig into how Nintendo have made this video game, it's just a remarkable attention to detail. There's this, I saw a headline that said that the team had an unlimited amount of time. There was no deadline for development, and they had 2,000 ideas. And I swear to God, they must have put almost all those ideas into this video game, because it really does feel like that. It really does.
The best character. Sorry, go ahead, Lucy.
No, I was going to say, so Tam and I spoke to, is it Tezuka-san and Mori-san at PAX earlier in the year, and they were like, yeah, we just didn't really have a deadline until development started. Then they had like a year and a half, but then they were like, yeah, we got the sound team in super early, and we invited every single person to submit ideas. And so from what it sounds like, it just sounds like because they had such a wide berth of ideas from different teams who ordinarily wouldn't be part of that process, it just sounds like, oh damn, those crazy kids over at Nintendo, they've done it again. They've just like, they've taken off all of the training wheels, and it just sounds like something magical. And I'm also like not a Mario person, but everything that you're saying about it, I'm like, oh, it does sound magical.
Here's a weird question for you. It's like, it all sounds amazing. This is, I'm blown away by how enthusiastic you are. I'm excited to dive into this thing. Is there anything to be said? And this is the most negative light you can put this in, so feel free to kick me out of this podcast forever. But is there something to be said about just like the constant variety doesn't really, is there like a cohesive tone or vibe to the game? Is it penalized at all, just vibe-wise, by just having like, blah, 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 over here, just constant shakeups?
No, and you know why, Ben? Those stupid flowers.
Oh,
those flowers are the best.
Those flowers are the best.
I love them.
They're the best character in the game.
Whoa, like, okay.
They literally, you play the stage, there's like, sometimes there's 9 of them, sometimes there's 1, and what they're going to say is like why you want to hang out with them. You have no idea what they're going to say. You're just like, oh, hey, look, a secret flower. And the flower's like, hey, it's a secret. Guess you found me. What, you want a coin or something? I don't know. Hey, like.
It's actually funny because Nintendo don't usually write funny dialogue, right?
Well, Paper Mario.
Paper Mario, sure.
Mario plus Rabbids, but I guess that's
that's Ubisoft.
It's Ubisoft, but they would poke a lot of fun at it.
These little flower guys steal the show. Every it's the one guy, whoever that one actor is. deserves a medal because he
really
carries it.
Ow.
He carries it every time.
Well, speaking of Ector, how is the new voice of Mario?
You don't really notice all that much.
Yeah.
You only do when it feels removed. Like when it's like Mario sounds like this when he does a triple jump or a jump. You go, woohoo! You're like, okay, it sounds like Mario has de-aged. He's no longer 35. He's like 25 now. Like it sounds.
How long has that man been 35?
Since the 80s.
Longer than Paul Rudd.
So yeah, and Luigi too, because Luigi is also played by a different person. So you don't.
It's the same guy.
Yep.
The same guy.
Yeah, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
You don't feel all that sad. It's very. I would say, have you guys been paying attention to all like the Rick and Morty discourse since they've like changed from?
No. I haven't paid attention to anything Rick and Morty ever, and I feel like my life is better off without it.
You missed out, man. Rick and Morty back in the day was good shit.
Let me just put it to bed for you, Lucy. Essentially, the guy who plays Rick and Morty is no longer there, and
mate, I know about that.
Yeah,
I know about that one.
And now
well,
there's
then
new
welcome to the
actors.
discourse.
Yeah, and there's I thought you were not part of the discourse. Lucy.
No. Do you, like, sorry, a quick aside. The only reason I know that is because like one of my favorite podcasts ever is The Besties, and I was on The Besties to talk about fucking High on Life, and then day after that's when all that stuff happened. So I was just
sure.
Oh man.
The point is that the new Rick and Morty actors that are playing Rick and Morty now are actually pretty good. They're like very close to what he sounded like. And there's only certain phrases and certain moments where you're like, I can kind of tell it's someone else. Yeah. But for the most part, you're like, this works super well. It feels comfortable. You're not sitting there going like, oh, where's Charles? I wish he was. It's not going to make you do that. You're going to barely notice after a couple hours.
I think as well in answer to your question, Ben, about just like cohesion, there's still a lot that is cohesive about this in terms of it's Mario and Peach and Toad, and you have blocks that you jump on, and it has a visual style that even though it's moving between different worlds, it still has a distinctive visual presence. So the music, it has a tone, even though it's completely different tracks along the way. So from a cohesion perspective, this feels unmistakably Mario through and through.
Oh, great!
It's new, and it's I'm not going to say risky, because risky implies there's a chance it might have not worked, but it's new, but it still feels authentically Mario in all the best ways, and so that cohesion is absolutely there right the way through.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's just, I mean, I'm really interested to see what the reviews, because we're recording this before the reviews go out.
If I had to guess, it's going to be 9s and 10s.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's 9s. I'm just wondering how many 10s it is. I would say the one thing that kind of hurts it a little bit is just like, we talked about the online functionality, but because I tried to do some play tests with people, other media reviewing it. And at that point, you're just like, oh, yeah, playing on the Switch online. That's fucking shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we couldn't, like, we were trying to find each other where we couldn't do that. The game doesn't really tell you where you are. So where your friends are, if you haven't unlocked that world, it just says you can't fast travel to them right now. And it's like, oh, okay, well, where are they? I don't know. You can't message each other, obviously, because there's no facility to do that. There's no voice chat unless you download a separate app or some shit, and I ain't doing that. Nobody's doing that. And so it really just makes you realize how unbelievably archaic Nintendo's approach to online is.
Yeah.
And hopefully they fix it with the Switch 2, because I do think it held back this game a little bit. Like, not a lot, don't get me wrong, but I do think if you had this seamless online experience where you could just click a button, immediately drop into a game with your friends, start talking to each other and joking around and talking about which race you want to go to next, if you could message each other, that would just be better. It would be a straight up better experience. It's still an incredible game. And this is a very minor qualm in the context of that, but it's definitely something I noted.
But to your point, Ralph, Nintendo has always been good about family and like content support of like what kids are allowed to play. Like my sister uses the Nintendo app to control how much my nephew can actually play his Switch. It's very well done. I would love it that if they put so much time and effort into this, that why not go the other way, where it's like if you're a Nintendo Switch Online Plus user with the Animal Crossing Mario Kart bundle stuff, you also get access to like better online functionality. It just works. There's some kind of like connectivity piece that just kind of fixes a lot of the issues of that, because that's been Nintendo's issue since the Wii. And I hope that for the next console generation they do take it seriously, because this they're missing out on the one aspect of their piece of the pie. They keep releasing these games that somehow have to operate like F-Zero 99 just came out, and you have 100 people playing F-Zero together, and I've seen tons of clips of people having zero problems. I've seen lots of clips of people being upset because the game doesn't run well and they're plugged in on Ethernet. And it's like, I wish that if they just give a little TLC, just a little bit, put an Ethernet port on my Switch. I don't care. Like, just give me that option. Because yes, I can go out and buy an Ethernet port, but their online stuff just isn't as cohesive as it should be.
Totally. Yep. Well, I think this is going to be 90 plus on Metacritic. That's my guess. I'd be very surprised if I was wrong about that. I think it is, again, I'm not a Mario expert, but it feels like a bit of an all-timer. And I feel like you're going to see this take over on Twitter or like social media for the next little while, when people see just what these levels are and they get to experience them for themselves. And I think this is going to make people, you walk away from this just feeling so happy that you purchased and played this piece of software. Like, it's just like, you really do just feel like, damn, man, that was a great video game. What a wonderful experience that these people have put together for us. That is definitely how I felt by the end of it. And that's a rare feeling, you know? And and I say that not as a Mario fanboy. I'm just not. You know, I'm not. That's just not my bag. But it really gave me.
That's me. That's my bag, and I say it's gonna be great,
man. So October 20th, the greatest game release day ever. I mean, XCOM and Dishonored in 2012 were the same day. I'm trying to think like. But if both of these are 90 plus, experiences, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
Well, also this week you've got Sonic Superstars, and that's interesting.
Well, I was gonna say, what's a good segue into what else we've been playing, and that seems like a perfect one. Gerard, you've platinumed it.
I have, yes.
How was
Sonic Superstars.
He's sinking in his chairs, ladies and gentlemen. He just coming after the Mario
Sonic Superstars.
Let me just start off that Sonic was no, I'm just kidding. No, so Sonic Superstars is a very okay game. There's nothing offensively wrong with it. It does feel like what would be like a modern evolution of Ben's laughing.
I hope Sonic isn't listening to this. That is a devastating segue.
No, it's the Sonic fans that you should be worried about.
Hold on 1 second. Let me get this. Let me just back up a little bit. It's not the game. The game's not bad. It's not bad by any means. It's very fun, very well designed, very well thought out. It's just it's like looking at a crooked picture that you just want to kind of just give a little straighten, and then after a while it starts to slip back down and you kind of just do it again. Content wise, it's very robust. A lot of the level designs feel pretty unique. Like, it's not just your fair share of like this zone or that zone from a Sonic game. There's a couple of those, but they really try to kind of stretch their wings and go into uncharted territories that Sonic really hasn't been in yet. The Emerald powers are really cool. All 7 of them. You can, when you get the Chaos Emeralds, you get a new skill that will allow Sonic to behave a certain way. So he can make clones of himself, which is like a whole screen clear. He can turn into a fireball that jets all over the place, and you can kind of aim where you go. He can get a secondary attack, so like it changes a mechanic and adds it to Sonic, and that's effective for everyone. So Knuckles has a different attack, Tails has a different attack, Amy has a different attack, so on and so forth. So all the power-ups are really cool. The music is either really great or really just fine. It's like you could tell that T. Lopes, who did Sonic Mania and is amazing, he definitely had his DNA and blueprint in a lot of the game. But you could also see the moments they were like, T didn't do this track, and T didn't do this track, and T didn't do this track. And it's just super weird because the soundtrack is very Genesis inspired. Like there are stages where you're playing and you're like, there are no Genesis synths. It's very much a modern Sonic song, modern flair, you know. And then there's one track that isn't a throwback to a Sonic stage, isn't like a throwback to original Sonic lore or anything like that. And you listen to the song and you're like, this is an 8-bit Genesis track that is like on a roller coaster that's going really fast. And it doesn't quite fit the stage you're listening to. And it ends up kind of becoming a bit of a very forgettable track. Overall, like it's not an offensive Sonic game. It's a solid B. It's Sonic fans, if they like the platforming style, it's going to be, you're going to enjoy it. It's just not Sonic Mania, which I think is like, that's going to be the discourse is, well, and everyone's always like afraid to talk about it, but like the people who say, there's like 2 red flags. If you hear someone say like Sonic's come a long way because of Sonic 06, cut that shit out. No one cares anymore. Everyone forgot about Sonic 06. It's not YouTube 2011. I'm sorry I was a part of that conversation, you guys, but it's long gone. Sonic 06, long time ago. Second thing is, don't say it's Sonic 4 because it's not Sonic 4. Okay. Sonic 4 was like not a great game for that era. It had some great ideas, but making it episodic and cutting it short, obviously leaving a bad taste in many people's mouths. Just go in with the expectation of it's going to be fun. The multiplayer stuff is actually very great. Like Mario Wonder, none of what you do multiplayer wise collides or interacts. So, and you can play as all 4 characters plus a secret character in the game, should you choose to be a completionist and get to the end and that kind of stuff. Everyone handles way differently. Of course, you have, you know, the standard 3 boys, but even Amy has a hammer and a double jump, and that changes everything. When a character runs off screen, they automatically bubble like in Mario, where like instead of the screen trying to catch up to them, they just run off the screen, and then you can just press X and you spawn right next to them right away. There's no like, hey, touch the bubble to free them, or, oh man, help me, I'm stuck in this cage, I need to be released. It's, oh, you're off screen? Great, you're gone, you're not dead, press X to get back into the action. It's super quick in that way, which I really, really enjoy. But
is there a lot of that then? Because you're just going so fast? Aren't people just flying everywhere?
Kind of. You will have a lot of, it just depends on how fast you go and what you're playing with friends, because you're going to be running, you know, you got to move fast. So you're going to be running a lot. And the thing is that the camera doesn't always know where to go. So that was the biggest issue I had, was I played the whole game with 3 people, and every time we played, it was like someone would run off and the camera would not chase them. Another person would run off and the camera would chase that person. And it never really knew how to kind of solidify that. I imagine with a couple of patches and stuff, they'll figure it out. It's not atrocious, but if you are like, we're going to speed on the game together, don't recommend that, because they're going to fight that camera. The other thing is, there's a huge difficulty spike when you get into the game. Like the very last fight, in the spoiler, there are multiple campaigns. There's like different opportunities to keep playing the game. It's not just one and done. All of the final boss fights in all of the campaigns are brutal. Like they will take, if you're doing it blindly and you're not looking at walkthroughs on YouTube, to actually learn what you're seeing is a lot. You have to kind of really pay attention to what's there. You're going to die a ton. There's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of death and waiting in those scenes. And it's going to take a lot of the wind out of your sails, because otherwise it's a pretty fine experience.
Okay. So Gerard, hypothetically, I'm a big Sonic nostalgia guy, love Sonic Mania.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people probably listening to this that are on that fence. Like, will I have a good time if I spend my hard-earned dollars on this game? Should I buy it?
Here's the problem. It's $60.
Yeah.
Is it?
Okay.
It's $60.
Surprised. Very surprised.
That's the true problem. If just to make sure I'm not an idiot, I'm gonna Google it just to make sure. And I want to say it is. Let me just double check. Yeah, it's $60 brand new. Okay. That's the issue. It's not a matter of there is not enough quality or love or effort put into the game, because obviously something like Spider-Man 2 is $70, right? Like you can't compare Sonic Superstars and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Mario Wonder and Tears of the Kingdom and all these games and go like, this makes sense how this all works. Game dev is one scale, right? Sonic Superstars is $60, and it's rough to sell that for $60. I think if it was $40, that's even pushing it. I would have done 35 to 30.
Interesting. Interesting.
But I don't know. That's just my vibe. I'm mostly, I love modern Sonic games. I love classic Sonic games. I pretty much like almost all the Sonic games. I like this one too. It's all right, and I don't think it's that I'd wait, get Christmas gift or birthday gift or wait for a discount, because $60, it's a lot for what this is offering.
Yeah.
To wrap things up, because I know we've been going long-winded about this. There is a multiplayer mode that I don't know why is in this game. It is really? There is a 8-player battle mode where so this is kind of the thing that I'm so glad I'm not doing my video today, because it's like there's too much to talk about. But in traditional Sonic games, you get the Chaos Emeralds, and then you get like levels, lives, and rings and stuff. There are no lives in Sonic Superstars, so you don't have to worry about death. Death is infinite. You come back, no problem. However, you get medals for completing bonus stages, for earning 100 rings, and these medals go to a shop. And in that shop, you basically get to purchase and create a medal avatar that you create. And the limited options of the avatar are pretty basic. It's like you can buy all the parts for Tails and make Mecha Tails. You can buy all the parts for Metal Sonic and make Metal Sonic. The same parts for Amy and Knuckles and the secret character and that kind of stuff. But it doesn't go beyond that all that much. There's like, it's very limited. And I know this because I farmed for dozens of hours to get the highest that I could at the time ranking in the online battle mode prestige setting, because as you play this game online, you earn more medals to buy more things, and you gain experience points to level up your account, which just doesn't do anything other than more rewards from the shop. And there is like this prestige factor. You go from rookie to fighter to warrior, and you climb all the way up to grandmaster, and then you prestige to bronze rookie, and you're bronze fighter, bronze warrior, all the way up to bronze grandmaster. And every time you clear a prestige, you unlock a really rare Sonic thing. This sounds like there's a huge, robust online mechanic and online ranking system, right?
Yeah.
No, there isn't. What it is you are playing 4 battle modes that get factored in 3 times. And it's either one of these 4 scenarios: race to the finish, shock your opponent because now you can shoot lightning bolts out of yourself, collect most of the stars, or survive the environment around you. So you play quick 3 rounds. Whoever has the most points gets the most medals, earns the most experience points towards their prestige ranking, and that's it. There's nothing more beyond that. You can create private lobbies. You can do it with randoms online. This morning I booted up and tried to play and couldn't connect to anyone. The game's out at this point, and I couldn't connect to anyone, but I could connect with my friends. And that's the reason why my video's not out now, because I still have to get prestige, platinum, diamond, grandmaster, whatever the hell it is, because that's what I have to do with my job, for science, because no one's done it yet. And there's kind of this weird dichotomy of, is it worth it? No, but someone's got to prove that they've done it. So that's kind of where my head's at. It's a very weird thing, because the medals that you get, you collect throughout the entire story modes. It's like a secondary currency that you're constantly thinking about collecting and earning, and then you put them into buying pieces for a robot that you play for a battle mode that quickly loses its luster, like out the gate.
Weird. Yeah, that doesn't sound like you.
No.
That doesn't sound like they really needed to do that.
They didn't.
Done other things.
I thought it was going to be like a Sonic 199 kind of vibe, where it was like, there's 99 Sonic metal people beating the crap out of each other. Not
the
that
perfect game.
The perfect Sonic game. So yes, I apologize for my in-depthness about it, but yeah, that's basically Sonic Superstars. $60 is a hard sell. Otherwise, yeah, it's a fine game.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, Ben, what have you been playing then?
Sonic Superstars mainly.
Ben,
furthermore,
just the battle mode.
He's the only other man online.
Hold on. I talked the entire time, and Ben, you didn't.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
You bastard.
No, here's a weird one. But Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. Which is the mobile
one.
game.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
I assume everyone's kind of on different levels of Final Fantasy VII fandom. Gerard, you're the biggest fan here. Is that a fair read?
I feel like I am.
Okay.
But I have not touched Ever Crisis because I am not a fan of the whole pay to get stuff.
Gotcha.
Then boy, do I have a solution for you. So if you're not familiar with Ever Crisis, this is the free-to-play Final Fantasy VII remake, but it's not just 7 that they're remaking, but they're also remaking Crisis Core and everything in the Final Fantasy VII universe. In theory, they're going to get to all of it. We're going to have a weird mobile version of the Dirty Dirge, Dirge of Cerberus, of course, Advent Children, all that good stuff.
Oh, okay.
Before Crisis, which is the game focusing on the Turks that never came to the States. I'm excited for that.
It was on cell phones for people in Japan only.
Yeah. So interesting idea, but I'm totally with you, Gerard, where I started the game up and it's like, oh, it's another remake of Final Fantasy VII. And I like the art style. It kind of feels like a throwback kind of PS2 chibi looking RPG type thing. You know, it's like, it's different than the original 7. And so you boot it up and you do the whole bombing mission. It's like, oh, this is cool. There's a cutscene even before that where it's Sephiroth and Cloud fighting. And then Zack jumps in and starts fighting Sephiroth as well. And so the cutscene looks beautiful, and also, not to go too dorky with this stuff, but Final Fantasy VII and the expanded Final Fantasy VII universe is it's in a weird spot, right? After the ending of Remake, it's people are trying to reach for clues to the puzzle of what is going on here. What is Sephiroth really doing? And so it feels like, oh, it's a throwaway opening cutscene where Cloud is fighting alongside Zack with Sephiroth, but it's like, this could be a hint or it could just be a scene from the future of the Final Fantasy VII Remake series. So yada, yada, yada. You go through all this, you go through the bombing mission, and then the free-to-play iPhone-ness it's a brick wall right in your face where it's just a whole screen of, hey, taking you through the guided tour of, here's a currency over here, and this currency unlocks this, and then this is blah, 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 blah. However, there is cool stuff in here that's buried for fans, and I know this makes me a fake ass gamer boy, but eventually I was like, this is all on YouTube. Why am I not just watching like all the stuff that you can unlock if I were to grind my way through this free to play game? And so there's cool stuff in here if you're a Final Fantasy VII fan and just watching it on YouTube and not dealing with any of that free to play nonsense on your phone. It's just a cool series of Final Fantasy VII short films that I think fans would enjoy. Gerard, is there any universe you'd ever watch some of this stuff?
Yeah, I would definitely.
Okay.
I'm a big Zack Fair Crisis Core fan. That is like I am ride or die Zack Fair at the end of time. If everyone's like, I love Cloud, and I'm like, no, you don't. You don't love Cloud. You love someone else, and you need to get you need to get educated, my friend. But yeah, I mean, when Crisis Core got remade, I was like the one guy that was like, let's go. This thing was so up my alley, and then I played it at Summer Games Fest and I really enjoyed it, and then as it got closer I was like, this is gonna have a lot of predatory stuff that's gonna make me sad, because that dumb completionist tick in me is gonna go, but what if I just spend $10 to get there? What if I just spend and I had to swear it off.
Okay, all right, well, you won't be tempted to buy Tifa's lifeguard outfit if you're just watching on YouTube, which it's a weird way to go. For? Oh, you wouldn't want to know. It's a horrific amount. But there's cool stuff. Like they have kind of origin stories, quote unquote origin to entering Midgar, I guess, for some characters in like these unlockable stories where you can see Tifa going to Midgar for the first time. And, she learns how to navigate the mean streets of Midgar from Jessie. And like that relationship isn't even played up that much in remakes. So that's fun to see. You get to see Aerith in Midgar for the first time, and she's just desperate to go on a picnic, and there's cool stuff with her mom in there. Like you see Cloud entering Seventh Heaven for the first time, which it turns out, Gerard, is the day before the bombing mission. I always thought the Cloud had been around for a while, but it's like, oh no, it's just the next day. She's like, oh yeah, here you go. Here's a mission for you, new guy. Jump in there.
Interesting.
So the big meat and potatoes of this, though, is it's confusing. So Square Enix released that Battle Royale Final Fantasy VII game, which was called First Soldier, which
Is that still going?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
They pulled the plug on that within a year of it being around.
Which scares me because there's a lot of work going into Ever Crisis here. And if they're yanking that other game, like, are they going to remake all of these Final Fantasy VII games and then just pull it off store shelves if it's not doing as well? But what's confusing is they pulled the PUBG clone set in the Final Fantasy VII universe called First Soldier off the store. But within Ever Crisis, there is a whole story and little RPG experience that's called First Soldier, which apparently has some characters that tied into the Battle Royale. But the core of this is that it's Sephiroth's origin story, which is really cool. So there's 5 chapters of it so far, and it focuses on other soldier, members of soldier PO class. And so it's like Glenn, Matt, and Lucia. And this sounds like nonsense. However, in the latest Final Fantasy VII Rebirth trailer, there's a mysterious hooded character, if you remember him, walking around Junon.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so the leading theory is that's Glenn, who has that same goatee from a First Soldier game within Ever Crisis, the mobile game. So Sephiroth comes in like chapter 4, and it's just fun because he's got like cute short hair. And he's just like,
it's not that long hair, boy. It's very short.
Yeah. And he's just a weird kid is kind of his tone. He's basically been raised in Hojo's lab. So it's fun to see him interact with other people. And it's his first mission he's ever gone on. And there's some cool tidbits of Final Fantasy VII lore in there. But if you're a big Sephiroth fan, you want to see him being a weirdo. And he's trying to like rally the other troops and soldier, and he's whistling for them. And eventually Glenn goes up and he says, hey, Sephiroth, you're just a punk ass kid. Like, if you whistle again, I'm going to beat the crap out of you. You can't do that to us. And then Sephiroth is like, oh, shucks. He goes, I apologize for whistling, team. I didn't mean to offend anybody. He's just awkward teen boy. And it's really cool to see him in almost like an Anakin Skywalker type way. Like, even by chapter 5, he's already starting to break bad. So it's, again, cool stuff. Just watch it on YouTube, everybody. Don't deal with the mobile game if you're scared off by it, because there's cool stuff in there.
Yeah, because I actually played a little bit of it when I was at Summer Games Fest. I was so impressed by the production values on it. I was like, yeah, man, these guys are seriously like, there's a lot going on here. Like, they put a lot of money behind this. Clearly, this doesn't just happen. But yes, when it comes to the gacha stuff, I'm like, no, thank you very much. And you're right as well. That other concern about, is this going to stick around? And like, is this all this work that goes into this? If Square decide to pull the plug, which they eventually will, because they pull the plug on all their live services eventually, then yeah. Oh, here we go. Cameo time.
This is Yayo. She's not feeling too good, but she wanted to get picked up for a little bit.
Welcome, Yayo.
Oh. So other than Ever Crisis, what else have you been playing, Ben?
Apparently I've been playing a lot of phone stuff. I guess having a kid kind of does that to you. You have a lot of time for phone games. And
Marvel Snap, baby. Have you tried Marvel Snap?
I tried it and then I got rid of it a while ago.
We're going to come back to this subject after we're finished recording, my friend. Don't worry. I will make
Okay, I get it. I enjoyed the Ben Brode interview, but I couldn't do it. But Apple Arcade is really good, y'all. I feel like nobody talks about it.
I have it, and like I love Assemble with Care. There's a couple other things on there that I really enjoy, but
there's this game that came out, I think last month, and it's called Finity. Just Finity. I think it's technically Finity Dot. But it's such a well-designed little game. It's, to boil it down, it's kind of Threes meets Bejeweled.
Oh, I'm downloading it immediately.
Yeah. But Threes meets Bejeweled, but then it gets increasingly tricky and has more of a puzzle aspect as you're trying to complete these boards, and they're adding new pieces into it. But incredibly clean presentation. Like, I've been hunting for kind of a Bejeweled replacement on my phone because EA has just let that deteriorate into nonsense at this point.
Have they? Really?
Oh, yeah. It's like a free-to-play, get boosts and power-ups, but you can pay to get it.
Yeah. And I have Bejeweled 3 on my phone, but it's just barely limping along, and there's just ads jumping in at random moments. It's a nightmare. And so to have like the Apple Arcade experience of just, here's a clean little game that's just going to be the perfect little game to play vertically. I've had a blast with it. And, eventually you can unlock like a music mode that kind of turns it into like a little Tetris effect. It's just clean, great game design that is not getting the love it deserves. But Finity is the name of it. And it's from Seaba is the name of the developer.
That's cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's cool that Apple have this arcade thing. They really do put some effort behind it. They just don't make any effort to get the word out about it. Like,
it's tough.
I mean, like, because we, as like fucking the nerds that we are, we see everything that goes on, almost everything that goes on in the core gaming space, and that is a product for core gamers, by the way. Like, sure, it's obviously a product for mobile gamers, absolutely. But mobile gamers are probably going to be playing Candy Crush anyway and PUBG Mobile and all that sort of shit, right? That product is really meant for us because it's like welcoming us into that mobile ecosystem without all the shit that comes with mobile games. But Apple just don't try and speak to us. Like, when do we see it advertised? When do we see anything with regards to that product? You know what I mean? And I guess it's Apple. Like, they're such a weird sort of mercurial organization. Trying to understand them is pointless. But I don't know. I just think that if they really tried to put that product front and center in front of people like us more, then people would pay attention to it because there's some really good stuff on there.
You want Apple on stage during a Jeff Keighley presentation? Like that level?
Yeah, like exactly that, right? And because I really think that if they actually got up on stage and actually showed what this product is, then it could pay some dividends. You know what I mean? Like it's I think it's worthwhile. And because I respect the effort behind it. I respect the fact that they're trying to clean up the mobile space, or at least create a corner of it that's just good and pure, and you pay a couple of bucks a month for it, sure, but you're paying a couple of bucks a month for some really excellent games. So that's more than fair in my book.
Yeah, shout out to there's another game that no one's talking about it online, but Sping, it's called, and it technically came out I think last year or the year before, but it's I loved Pixel Junk Eden back in the day, but imagine that type of game if it played really, really well, and it's just one finger button to like get the string as you're swinging around trying to collect different collectibles. It's an absolute blast, and it really has zero coverage online, but Sping is the name of it. It's from SMG Studio.
Oh, SMG, sure.
SMG.
You know them? Of course, yeah, they're Australian, right?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. Yeah.
Those actually, I know those guys.
Chat with the studio boss actually quite regularly, and
me too.
I wonder if he's watching. And he's never mentioned this to me. So
the movie they did Moving Out 2, Death Squared. Those are great games.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, Super One More Jump.
Well,
yeah.
Check it out.
Oh, there we go.
It's a great little game.
I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna show him.
Well, I will go because I know, Ralph, you've got a new piece of tech that I definitely want to ask you about. But I just want to quickly give a shout out to Chance of Senar.
So excited for this.
So I also want to give a shout out to Mark Brown over on Game Maker's Toolkit, because he has a new series where he basically highlights games that you can kind of finish like over a weekend. And this is how I heard about this one. Came out at the beginning of September, completely missed it. And it's basically a very me game. It is.
Yes, it's very you. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is. Tickles your brain the same way that Obra Dinn and Case of the Golden Idol does. You basically, stranger in a strange land, you arrive, there is, and you don't understand the language that the people who inhabit it speak. And so there will be these glyphs, these symbols that appear either, on a wall next to something, or in speech bubbles as you meet people in the environment. And you basically, as soon as you encounter a new symbol or a new glyph, it gets put in your journal. And then what you can do is you basically use your skills of deduction, depending on if it pops up in the environment somewhere, or, one example is every time you see someone, there'll be the same glyphs. You can kind of assume that means greetings. And so you can make notes about what you think things mean. And then as you solve puzzles, it kind of, you can figure out if you are on the right lines or on the wrong line, or on the going down the wrong path. And then it does the Obra Dinn thing of it'll give you a page in your journal, and it'll have 3 pictures of something, like 3 sketches of something. And then if you match the right symbol with the word or the concept or the phrase or whatever, it kind of says, yeah, you did it, congrats. And then it solidifies it. And so you basically build up your own little dictionary. And it is... oh, it's so satisfying. I was playing it on the flight on the way back from New York. It is such a lovely little game.
Yeah,
it's pretty short as well. I've heard, like a couple of hours kind of thing.
Yeah.
I
haven't finished it yet. I'm 2 hours in. I finished the first language because there's multiple ones. and there's a kind of a story within it about, at least the part that I did, the 2 hours that I did, it was like, oh, there are these devotees, there are priests, and like there's this kind of religious thing going on. You're trying to get to the bottom of it and figuring out, hey, how come those people are blocking off that gate? Or, hey, everyone's talking about God for some reason. What's up with that? It's a great little game. I'm really enjoying it.
We're getting ready to kick off our Game of the Year debates at MinnMax. We air all those publicly and stuff. And this is one of those games that I don't think anyone's gotten to. I mean, are we blowing it by not getting the chance of Sonar before the end of the year? Okay. Good to know.
I genuinely just think it's a very well crafted puzzle. Like nothing in there feels superfluous. And I think that's so important when you have a game that is left up. So much is left up to the interaction of the player, and you don't want to make them feel overwhelmed. Like every area that I would go into, you kind of just wander around and it loops back in on itself, and it never feels too big or overwhelming. At no point did I get stuck, which is great. There's like no friction there. And also even the little puzzles are fun. There was one that was like, there's a bunch of beds and you have to move them. The parking game on iOS, like the old parking game, we have to move the cars.
Sure.
It was basically that, but you're moving beds to get something out. It's great. Music is lovely too. Lovely little art style. It's good. I really enjoy it. So.
Yeah, I have it installed on like every device right now, with the intention of having the time to play it. But obviously, that's not going to happen until. But maybe soon though, because there's like a little bit of a gap coming up in the schedule after the Mario review's down. So I actually have had this on my list for a while because I originally saw Jason Schreier talking about it.
Yes, I saw Schreier.
But it just caught my eye in the lead up to it because I was like, okay. It's published by Focus Home Interactive as well.
And the dev is like Rundisk, who I've not heard of.
I don't know.
Before.
Apparently, it's just a duo team.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's really, really interesting. That and Cocoon.
Yeah.
I think are two of like because obviously I've done Dredge and I've done Dave the Diver, and I can't think of any other indies this year that have really hit that hard and really. Like, so I think Cocoon and Chance of Sonar, like the last two that I really need to tick off. So just because I've heard such wonderful things about them. So yeah.
Great year for puzzle games though. I mean, Cocoon and Viewfinder, like it's been a good
Viewfinder
good
as well.
batch.
Yes, I played that too. That was great. Yeah.
But Ralph, you have the
I got
Meta
a
Quest
new toy.
3.
Talk to us. Oh man.
Okay. So
how heavy is that?
It's slightly heavier than the last one, but not by much. And wearing it is quite comfortable. It's with this strap. If you use the normal strap, it fucking sucks. It's like unusable. And there are also other straps you can buy that are like better versions. That whatever. This was just kind of like an impulse purchase because I don't do much VR. Okay, I just don't. I think there's two sides to VR. There's like the whole. I think there's ultimately to this point there's been two sides to VR. There's the social stuff. It's like VR chat and whatever else. And then there's gaming. And I think the gaming side of things, it's just plateaued for years. There's one or two things. Obviously, Half-Life Alyx is incredible and Beat Saber is amazing and whatever. But realistically, it's just a whole bunch of stuff that is working up towards something one day maybe. Okay.
Apparently, Walkabout Golf is amazing, but I haven't tried that yet. Apparently, a friend of mine loves it.
Yeah. Well, like there's definitely those little things that pop up and you're like, oh, this is tailor-made for VR or gaming and for sure, right? But on the whole, that scene has had, 10 years now of concerted effort behind it in terms of getting hardware and software stood up.
Oh, and there's really only 10 years, hasn't it?
There's really only like 5 games that you'd point to as being like really, truly must-play experiences in VR. Yeah. So I don't do much VR, but I was like, all right, I'll just check out what Meta's doing because it's like whatever. The biggest selling, when I bought this, I didn't really understand the mixed reality thing. I was like, yeah, cool. I can play a game where my ceiling is collapsing. Oh, wow, how exciting. That is not what this is, okay? Having now used this for just a few days, this is like remarkable technology that is absolutely going to be the future of I think like how we interact, what we wear in our faces and how we. So Just as an example. So the way this works is that I put this on and it has full pass through. Okay. Some cameras that allow me to just look around the environment. And already that is a big deal. Most VRs have pass through. Most VR headsets have pass through, but it's usually like a grayscale thing. It's really delayed. It's unusable. Like you can't walk around with it. You can't interact with the environment. This has full pass through, and it's not amazing, but it's certainly good enough where I can just put this on and leave it on and then walk around my environment. I can walk outside if I wanted to. I could, just stay here. But I don't go outside, but if I did go outside, I could wear this, right? And so that allows you immediately to begin interacting with space while keeping this on and doing things. Then you get to the kind of like mixed reality stuff where I'm able to bring up a screen in front of me and it kind of just sits in front of my field of view. And as I'm looking around and walking around and doing everything, that screen stays exactly where I left it initially. And it's a really beautiful, crisp screen, by the way. The screen door effect is essentially gone as a result of the pancake lenses and all the stuff that they've done there. And so I could be standing at my sink doing dishes and I could have this fucking screen up in front of me playing YouTube. And like when you experience that for the first time, you're immediately like, oh, okay, this is the future. This is absolutely how we are going to be living our lives in future. It's not going to look like this. It's going to look like a little pair of glasses that we put on and whatever else, but they are going to be what we wear and they are going to allow us to bring up a screen instantly and interact with it. And like, I can obviously, I can grab that screen, by the way, like with my hand. I'll try and put some videos in while we're showing it. I can grab that screen with my hand like this because it uses full hand control, by the way. I don't need the actual controllers. I can pinch it and then resize it.
Wait,
move
what?
It.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, I don't need controls to do this, by the way. I'm
no controllers?
Yeah, so like I'm like sitting there. Again, I could be doing my dishes at the kitchen. I could wash, grab the screen like this with this motion, move it around, resize. I can't actually do that gesture, but I can resize it. And then I can just continue on. I can then pick it up, and while I'm walking, I can walk through my house holding the screen in front of me. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm in my bedroom. I'm going to lie down on my bed. I'm going to throw the screen up there. I'm literally doing this, and I can just lie in my bed and I can watch it. You know what I mean? And like, that's crazy. Like I used to watch like iPad like shows on my in bed on my iPad. And I'm like, why would I do that now? I could just use this headset. Because the quality is good enough where it's like, but that's just the mixed reality mode. I can also go into like cinema mode where I'm just like, obviously in a cinema. We've all seen that in VR, sure. But the fact is now the quality is good enough where it actually is enjoyable to watch that media. That was the big problem before. The screen door effect meant there was so much compromise in going into those virtual theater settings. Now you don't have to compromise. Again, I don't want to say it's 4K quality, but it's at least like, I'm going to say 720p quality, more than watchable given the fact that you've got this massive screen in front of you and it's really immersive. Then you get to the actual mixed reality programs. And there's one, which is like, imagine a keyboard in front of you, like a piano keyboard, okay? And then you've got the headset on and like Guitar Hero, there are little lines that come down and that tell you which piano keys you should press at which time.
Perfect.
And you can just learn how to play piano by doing that with a real piano by wearing this headset. So I know I'm sounding really crazy and like kind of weirdly manic and whatever, but I did not understand what this was until I put this on and started using it. And then as I said, immediately when I started using it, I was like, fuck me. I understand why Apple are getting into this and they're trying to sell like a $3,000 headset because it legitimately does feel quite magical when this stuff kicks in and works in the way that it does. That's even like virtual desktop stuff, for example. This is so good that I can actually have my desk here and I can connect it to my PC and I can be sitting anywhere at a cafe, for example. And if I bring a little keyboard with me, I can connect remotely to my PC. I can then have 3 massive screens in front of me, like PC desktop screens. It streams my computer to my headset. I'm using a keyboard sitting there and it's just like this very productive kind of environment given the amount of screen space that I have and given the clarity of what's on there. I can read the words properly, whereas again you couldn't do that with previous VR headsets. So it's like it really just your imagination runs wild about what this is eventually going to be one day, you know. And it really has killed every other VR headset for me.
Wow.
As soon as I got this, I packed away my PSVR 2.
Yeah,
I'd only used it a little bit before, but now I was like, There's no need for that headset. And any headset that does not do this mixed reality stuff just seems like so behind the ball now, because this is clearly the future of where all this is going. And I know I sound so crazy right now.
You don't.
I'm sure I do.
It sounds like what the promise of like HoloLens was from back in the day.
Yeah.
Totally. And it's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. The hand tracking stuff is a bit weird and janky sometimes, and the quality still has a ways to go. Definitely the pass-through cameras have a long way to go. They're only 4 megapixel cameras right now. And so there is a lot of clarity lost for sure. I don't want to create the impression that it's perfect, but I'm certain that in 1 to 2 generations, it will be basically perfect. And at that point, it's going to be totally wild to see how this technology takes over. Like, absolutely insane. So
we all laughed at Zuckerberg with his metaverse, and now look at us
crawling
back.
I think the metaverse fucking sucks, and I think Facebook's version of it sucks. But I think they've always made a fantastic headset. They really have, and I think this is still another fantastic headset. And then, obviously when Apple gets into this business and gives it a massive like shot in the arm in terms of what mixed reality is and how it affects our lives, yeah, dude, it's I was totally unprepared for it until I began to see it for myself. And then I was like, wow, okay, yeah, cool. This is it for sure.
That is wild that, Facebook, Meta, that they are just kind of stealing a little bit of that thunder for having the great mixed reality headset. And also, Apple Vision Pro is $3,500 and this one is $500.
Correct.
Whoa.
Correct. But again, I don't know what the quality of the Apple Vision Pro is. If it fixes all of my complaints, then maybe it's worth that price point.
I think they're trying really hard to go after that like Apple product vibe of like, it's not just you're not just buying a headset, you're buying a lifestyle. You're buying.
It just works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it kind of does. Like, because I'm lucky because I have a big TV screen here, right? And it's very big, and I have like a little setup here, personal studio. But if I didn't have that, and I wasn't happy with my home theater setup, this is a very, very enjoyable way to watch media in your house on a virtual big screen that is just so immersive. And
this is going to do a lot for the VR porn enjoyers.
Oh.
I'm sure it will.
Shout out to the perverts.
Sure.
Shout out to the perverts. This one is for you.
Well, that's
guys.
That's what made the DVD format successful.
Yeah.
Porn shows DVD, and that's what won it.
It's where SEO as well.
All of that shit,
porn,
So where porn goes, everything else follows. Yeah. And yes, I think you're right about that, Lucy. So look, as
I'm so impressed. I'm fleeting on this podcast. I want you all to like set a reminder 6 months from now. Ask Ralph again. Are you still watching YouTube on this thing while washing your dishes? Is this just like?
To be clear, I have very specific. My setup is very tailor made to allow me to consume media in the way that I want. I've got this desk and that fucking TV and whatever, and I got 2 computers and what have you. But I think inside my house is not as well set up, and I do plan to use it inside my house at times, even though my family will think it's very weird, but they will get used to it because they have to. And I really am just excited to see the experimentation that will take place on the mixed reality app front and see what people produce there, because I think that some big things are going to happen there. Like I really think that. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the dumbest thing ever, and I'm just whatever. But I really don't think so. I think Apple are pretty smart, and the fact that they're putting billions of dollars and they're staking the next phase of their like product journey on mixed reality, I think already tells you that this is the real deal. And my experiences for just a few days tell me that this is absolutely the real deal.
That piano thing, projecting it onto a real piano, that's nuts. The most tempting thing I've heard since the launch of VR, to be honest.
Absolutely. And it's like you could do that with a drum set, and you could probably do that with a million things that we haven't even thought about yet. Imagine like a workout environment in a park. Like let's say you go to a park and you're wearing a mixed reality headset. Imagine what they could set out this kind of little obstacle course for you. No, I'm not even joking, by the way.
But you're going to look so much dumber. You already look dumb wearing the headset. Now you're also leaping around.
Look dumb now, but imagine when lots of people are doing this. Like that's the point,
together.
It's beautiful.
The thing that I'm thinking about is, you guys remember when, was it the HoloLens or Microsoft at that E3 press conference was like, this is Minecraft, and we like all saw
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
virtual
On the table?
on the table.
Yes.
We all were like,
Yeah.
whoa, it's like growing, and you see Steve on the cart and everything. You're like, this is so cool. Just seeing the website for MetaQuest 3, half the things they showcase are like that demo, and it like looks solid. It looks great. I love my Quest. I play my Quest 2 almost every day. I love that thing. It's great. So
yeah,
I'm on
well, I
board.
would say that technology is the least impressive. If you think that's cool, that's the least
Damn
impressive
it,
part of
Ralph.
what mixed reality is. I'm serious though. Like I've played those little demos and they're like, oh, that's cute, whatever. Yeah, it's on my coffee table. How fun. But it's a whole other thing when you'd have these massive virtual screens around you that you can interact with your hands. By the way, it's actually surprisingly nice to touch type with this stuff as well.
Oh.
You get a keyboard in front of you and you're literally doing these ones with your fingers, and the way the keys press and pop back and the sound effects, it feels great. You can touch these virtual screens and scroll through them like you would a phone. It is crazy. As I encountered and practiced more and more with it, I was like, wow. So I don't know, man. I'm really interested to see what people think about this. I know I'm so excited about what this technology could be, and I never thought I would have said that, but I legitimately am very.
Okay,
very
so
excited.
MetaQuest 3, Mario Wonder, Spider-Man 2, give the full ranking, please.
Oh, absolutely. I would say in terms of raw shock value and just like opening your mind's eye, MetaQuest 3. Because you
Better
just,
than
like,
Mario Wonder!
Yeah, I mean, no, just again, just in terms of like how much it blew me away, I was like, wow, look at what this is going to be one day. In terms of as a video game, Mario Wonder is really remarkable. And then Spider-Man 2, I really enjoyed, don't get me wrong. I strongly recommended it in my review, but I was like, I've experienced a lot of this already. It's very well made. I'm very glad everyone else loves it way more, but I'm just like, this is solid. Yes, totally. So that's my force ranking for
Bold.
the three.
Bold.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
if MetaQuest 3 is the future, it's time to go to look at the past.
Damn! That is such a good segue. Holy shit.
That was awesome.
Well done, Lucy. I'm going to give you a golf clap for that one. That was very good. That's it.
Gerard, please, what is picks for this week in the way back?
Oh my God, everyone. It is the week of October 17th across the internet. We've got several anniversaries of stuff that's going to make y'all feel bad. You know what? Ben, you're new here. What is your pick as to a game that you remember fondly of, and how old is it today?
Yeah, this won't make it feel too bad, but buckle up for how bad you'll feel in a little bit.
Sure.
6 years ago, South Park: The Fractured But Whole released.
Good choice.
Yeah, from Ubisoft San Francisco. They went from developing Rocksmith to the South Park game, and now they're making X Defiant. It's just a weird studio trajectory.
Yeah, they
Unpredictable.
yoinked it from Obsidian and took
Yes,
it
that's
in-house.
right.
That's right. Yeah. And I really enjoyed this game. I feel like it was one of those. I really loved Stick of Truth when it came out in 2014. I'm just sucker for Paper Mario specifically. And so the fact that like, oh, we're having a South Park game that is just so clearly modeled after Paper Mario. It's like, I am completely on board. And I really enjoyed Fractured But Whole. I felt like as a cohesive story, it was so much more successful than Stick of Truth was. It's the longest form story Matt and Trey have ever told. And like it holds together pretty well, you know? And I don't know what was going on at the time, other big releases, but it feels like no one really talked about it in a big way.
I'll tell you what
that's
came
true.
out: Destiny 2 and Assassin's Creed Origins. Those were the two
Oh,
titles.
that'll do it.
Yeah,
Cringe.
I guess
you
that
asked
makes
what
sense.
was the greatest game day and releases ever? That was it, baby. Destiny
That was
2 and
it.
Assassin's Creed Origins. That's right.
But I
no,
think
I
also,
agree with you. They were great games, actually. Really
Very
well
good
made. They were
games.
Very
funny, and in that South Park way, like it didn't feel like they had compromised on the South Park humor. And they also were very well made video games that were quite smart, and with the class system, and they lent on the characters in the story and combined them with like RPG classes, and it was very well handled. I totally agree with you. Yeah,
They had a mad tie-in. Did you guys ever do the Nauseous Rift for this?
No.
So they had I remember doing it at Gamescom. There's a video on Gamespot somewhere of me and Tam doing it, where they basically put instead of an
I did
Oculus
do
Rift,
this.
the nose
I did do
thing.
this. Yes.
And so
yes.
stuff that you could find in the game, you could smell, and the game had a dedicated fart button. So of course you do is you press the button and it smells like farts.
I did that. Where was that? Was that an E3 we did that? I can't remember. I think it was an E3 or maybe it was a Ubisoft office thing. But I did that as well, and I was like, well, that was terrible. I really regret doing that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I did it at Gamescom. They definitely took it out on the road. But yeah, who knew that pressing a button to make a fart will make it smell like fart?
Farts never get old, man.
Ben, thank you for sharing that. Let's go to Ralph. Ralph, what's your game of the way back this week?
It's an oldie but a goodie. It's reliable. It's Mario. 38 years ago today. The Mario released on the NES. Can you believe that? Like 38. And actually, I remember Mario being my very first video game that I ever played when I was 4 years old, and I got it as a Christmas present. We were living in a place called Bundaberg, which is very famous for its rum here in Australia, Bundy rum.
There's also ginger beer, Bundaberg.
Of course, exactly right. That's right. And that was it, man. That was my very first start. I still remember unwrapping the NES. I remember playing Mario, and that's, I guess, where it all began for me. So 38 years, though, sounds like a very long time, doesn't it? And it's weird that it's 38 years today and Mario Wonder is coming out, tomorrow, 2 days from now. So it's basically the 38th year anniversary of Mario, and it's still managing to stay as fresh and like vibrant and innovative as it was all those years ago. It's so rare to see anything do that, you know?
Well, funny you say that, Ralph, because my game is Sonic 3 and Knuckles 29 years ago. The exact same thing when you compare, because literally Sonic Superstars just came out a couple of days ago. So they know what they're doing. They know they're paying attention. Sonic and Knuckles, for those of you who are uneducated, it was the part 2 of Sonic 3, essentially. You took your Sonic 3 pack and you plugged it on top of your Sonic and Knuckles game. You unlocked Knuckles' playable character.
That's right,
and you could either play all of the campaign of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, or you could just play the second half of Sonic 3, aka Sonic and Knuckles. And you just start from the middle of the game, and you kind of were lost if you didn't, narratively speaking, if you didn't play both. But I was that guy that rented Sonic 3 and Knuckles a billion times until I finally was like, I have to own this game. But definitely one of my favorites on the Genesis. Definitely, I think.
Yeah, me too. It was great.
I think Sonic 3 and Knuckles together are my favorite game on the Genesis.
There we go.
Yeah, Lucy, make us feel old.
Well, is it 12 years ago on October 12th, 2011? A little game called Batman Arkham City came out. What a banger. I think it is the best Arkham game, which it feels kind of weird to say given how incredible Arkham Asylum is. I went back and replayed them all a couple of years ago, but I feel like Arkham Asylum definitely shows its age a little bit, certainly when it comes to some of the boss fights. Arkham City just feels like that complete breath of fresh air when you go out into Gotham. I think in terms of the rogues gallery, it's got maybe the best balance of everyone. And it's just, and mixing it up with Catwoman. I love that game. I love Batman. And it's just, it's so good. I want to play it again.
Did you like Night? Did you like Night?
I did like Night. I didn't hate the tank stuff as much as everyone else did.
No, I know everyone shits on it so much. Yeah. True.
But I didn't mind it. I thought it was fun.
I did because of the time trials, but that's because completion.
Yeah, what are you doing? You got to stop that whole thing.
You do that to yourself, Gerard.
Just carry my body across the finish line, everyone.
Yeah, right. But that Mr. Freeze boss fight in Arkham City was so good. One of the greatest boss fights ever. Yeah. I was thinking about that game when I was playing Spider-Man 2, because I feel like no one really talks about it again. I don't know where I expect all these people to talk about these things all the time. But playing as Catwoman in Arkham City, I was like, I forget, you do it a decent chunk. But was there an upgrade tree or anything for Catwoman? I'm trying to remember if there's any. It was just take her as you get her, and that's it for these little chunks.
I think so, because she has moveset wise, she has the jacks on the floor. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you unlock other things for her later on.
Okay.
I don't remember doing that. But I also remember you had the Predator rooms and all the challenge stuff, and you had all of the skins to unlock. And a friend of mine was working at a convention once, and she just had like a stack of those things to redeem. So I had every single skin. It was great.
Nice.
The best.
Well done.
That was this week in the Wayback. And before I toss it back to you, Lucy, I do want to give a quick shout out to our homie, friend of the pod, Ben Starr. Everyone, if you guys don't know, Ben Starr is a part of a D&D group called Natural 6. And it is a D&D group that consists of a bunch of video game voice actors coming together to do a D&D campaign. They just launched on Kickstarter. It's kickstarter.com/projects/natural6. Support our boy Ben. This is not a brand deal. This is a genuine, both Bens. Support MinnMax and support Natural 6.
Ben Affleck.
Give him some money.
I don't know.
He always looks so sad.
Boy,
Duncan
Ben
Bucks.
Affleck needs money. He looks really down.
He's doing just fine, Ben Affleck. But Ben Starr, support him if you guys can. I think I got the Kickstarter. You guys know what it's about. Go check it out. They're at a time of us recording this, they're like getting closer and closer to their goal. So, and they've got 28 days left in their campaign. So if you liked Final Fantasy 16, you like Ben Starr,
The Witcher 3.
The Witcher 3. If you like The Witcher 3.
Doug Cockle is also in there as well. So.
Yep.
Alex Jordan was Mr. Hands in
Mr. Hands in the most. He got recast as Mr. Hands. He's the newer Mr. Hands.
He was in.
He did a really good job.
Demon Souls. He's the voice of you in Demon Souls and like Aoife and Holly. I go back with both of them for years because Aoife and I used to work at the same company, and Holly used to be a PlayStation access. So it is a who's whomst of British actors and games industry folks.
Hell yeah! Cool. So go check them out. Anyways, back to you, Lucy.
Well, that about does it for this week's episode of the Friends Per Second podcast. I want to say a big thank you again to the lovely Ben Hanson for joining us. Thank you.
Oh, gosh. Thank you so much for having me. If you enjoy this stupid voice, you can check out the MinnMax show. 2 N's in there. We have a big rotating crew to try and pick the best people to be on every week. But we have, Jacob Geller, YouTube essay extraordinaire, Kelsey Lewin, who is the co-director of the Video Game History Foundation, Leo Vader, who is a YouTube channel that's blowing up, Sarah Podzorski, who comes from the localization scene. She was at 8-4 on the 8-4 Play podcast. So a ton of other folks to rotate through. So check out the MinnMax show, everybody. We'd appreciate it.
Awesome.
Hell yeah.
Ralph, where can we find you?
Here. On the Chill Up channel. It's playing Mario, and then next week, Alan Wake.
Yeah.
Let's go, man. Let's go. I'm excited. I'm very pumped.
And Gerard, what about you?
You can find me at youtube.com/thatonevideogamer or twitch.tv/thecompletionist, where next week we're going to be having our show Indieland, and Lucy and Tam are our guest hosts this year. So we're raising money for dementia research, highlighting indie games. It's going to be 3 or 4 days streaming straight. I'm sure I'm going to get all kinds of hair waxed off my body in pain and eating hot sauce. So it's what we do. We raise money for charity. Ralph's face is very funny to me. Contextually, it doesn't make any sense. But basically, people donate money and they do painful things to me in honor of charity. So I'm a very hairy man, Ralph. There's a lot of hair that gets ripped off this body.
I have waxed Tam a lot through charity streaming stuff. So if you need someone to
you're going to be doing that a lot this coming weekend, Lucy. So that's October 27th to the 29th on my Twitch page. Hang out with us. We'll be there all weekend.
Yeah. And that's where you'll find me next weekend. I'm over on GameSpot and Giant Bomb. I just did a big timeline of all of Cyberpunk. So
cool.
Please watch that because
I'll watch that.
It took a lot out of me.
Yep,
a lot of work. And in lieu of the lovely Jake Baldino, I guess I'll say, tie your shoes and go to bed.